Good morning, America. It's Robert McNeely at RSBN's live desk on a gloomy day over Washington, D.C. Same here in the loveliest village on the plains, but it's those summer on and off weather patterns that make it fun, as President Trump is about to deliver remarks 2 hours from now from the Kennedy Center. But you can always count on RSBN's live desk to be right there for you to detail everything going on in the administration throughout the federal city and, of course, with your Congress, the government you put into place on November 5th of last year. And for immediate release from the White House, this big target, you want to ask, why is President Trump putting the tariffs on countless countries, friend and foe? Well, a big part of that is to bring the wealth back into this country. And Peter Navarro actually detailed that very well. We'll share in the broadcast via Truth Social the video that he produced through the Office of Management and Budget about the great, truly populist presidents and leaders throughout this nation's history, including Henry Clay, who advocated for the strong use of tariffs to bring wealth into the United States. Even the late, great President Abraham Lincoln, someone who was for economic protectionism, but it's really a sense that it's not an isolationism, as the globalists like to put it, but rather making us wealthy again. And this president is committed to that. And this modern version of right-wing populism that is bringing dignity and freedom not only to the sovereignty of the United States, but throughout the world in places like Brazil. Well, not so much right now. They're following the narrative we went through with all of the lawfare against President Trump with their great leader, Bolsonaro, who is just going through a ridiculous amount of lawfare and attempts on his own life. So we pray for his safety. But look at Giorgia Meloni in Italy and the countless other nations that are leaning into the leadership of this great president. And so many voices out there who want him to receive that Nobel Peace Prize. Why does this matter? It's because history does have a tendency of repeating itself. And the evil empire of the 1980s, the Soviet Union, that has really now been adopted by the Chinese Communist Party. If you look back at their communist meeting, their most recent one, Xi Jinping, the president, removed his most recent predecessor from the room. You will find Soviet hammer and sickle flags accompanying the Chinese flag. It's the Red Scare. It's a country that's committed to world domination and globalism. But President Trump completely changing the Indo-Pacific with trade deals with the Philippines and Thailand to Vietnam, which really puts them up against the ropes, the Chinese Communist Party, in their pursuit of taking over Taiwan and what they inflicted upon the world with their pandemic dating back to 2020. So this is a crucial thing to look at as President Trump continues the suspension of heightened tariffs on China. Now, President Trump this week signed an executive order suspending the heightened tariffs on China. This action is necessary to facilitate ongoing and productive discussion with China about the remedy of trade between our two nations, these imbalances and unfair trade practices that were welcomed in by none other than the Autopen when he was a United States Senator and during the Clinton administration, when 25 or so years ago, the Chinese Communist Party came into the World Trade Organization. They said it would be good for the United States, that cheap production and goods, labor, all of that would be good for free trade, but it was not fair trade. And in turn, it bankrupted Detroit and bankrolled Beijing in a process that really should have never happened. Now, these discussions will align the United States on national security and economic matters against the Chinese regime. The United States and China have engaged in multiple rounds of productive negotiations to address trade reciprocity and national security concerns. Now, the United States will therefore maintain the suspension of heightened tariffs on Chinese imports as outlined in Executive Order 14 298 until November 10th of this year. Now, the current 10% reciprocal tariff remains in effect during the suspension period, and this 10% reciprocal tariff sets a fair baseline to encourage domestic production, strengthen our supply chains, and ensure that American trade policy supports American workers first, instead of undercutting them. Now, other U.S. tariff measures with respect to China will remain in place. And the United States will continue its trade talks with China to promote fair trade practices and support American workers. So this all does work towards that imbalance that we saw. An imbalance that not only led to manufacturing and factories, especially throughout the heartland of the Midwest, to shut down in the Iron Dome of American manufacturing, not our security apparatus that President Trump wants to put into place, but a security apparatus in the sense of middle-class jobs and what really fuels a nation, and how we should not apologize for hitting our industrial revolution first. And that's why he got out of the Green New scam and the Paris Climate Accords, because China and India, although India friendly to our nation, and we trade with them as well. Oh, and by the way, President Trump stopping what could have been nuclear fallout between India and Pakistan earlier this year. These two countries, they're the biggest polluters in all the world. The plastics that they dump into the Pacific Ocean is just ridiculous. When I was up in Alaska, where President Trump will be meeting with President Putin on Friday to discuss peace terms, they were overfishing during the Auto Pen administration. They could care less about international treaties. The time and again, the Chinese Communist Party breaks international law, and the only way they respond to now following the rules is truly by strength, and it's peace through strength with this president. Now, working towards that imbalanced trade, President Trump, the dealmaker-in-chief, is taking action that he deems necessary to address the national emergency involving our growing and persistent trade deficit with foreign trading partners, especially China. They own so much of our debt, and the consequences of that deficit, President Trump is ensuring that our trade policy for the American economy levels the playing field so that American workers and that our economy can be strong in the entire process. This gives American workers and producers truly a baseline, strengthening America's defense industrial base. Now, for too long, unfair trade practices and America's massive trade deficit with China fueled the offshoring of American jobs and the decline of our manufacturing sector. President Trump is ensuring economic cooperation between the two largest economies in the entire world and protecting American interests and the unfair trade practices that the premier and his regime have attempted to use against the United States. Now, this U.S. goods trade deficit with China was $295.4 billion in 2024. This is the largest of any trading partner throughout the entire world. On an annual basis, this deficit is already decreasing substantially. The U.S. and China are working to address those imbalances to deliver real, lasting benefits to the American workers, farmers, and businesses as we see them today. Now, the United States and China are committed to ongoing negotiations to resolve trade disputes and strengthen economic ties, ultimately, that will bring true prosperity to both nations. Of course, we don't want to fight with anyone, but if you're going to impose your radical regime in a global scheme to really take over the world, and that was once something the far left said, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, a free and open China. That's something that is ultimately good. It's something that I think both Republican and Democrat administrations did not see the warnings with an emerging China. We thought that, like other countries with freedom and capitalism that we saw post-World War II, that somehow they would change their ways. But no, they have a 200-plus year plan. The religion of that government is just that, the government, the leaders there. It is an atheistic society, and we must pray for the church that's within China and have more growing voices, especially even Pope Leo now speaking out on those who have to go and worship behind closed doors or underground, something sadly his predecessor was not very vocal on, or should have been more vocal on, people with their religious liberty within China. I mean, think about this place. You have these apartment complexes built by corporations and government working together. Truly, it's, although they're communists, they're working in a fascist sense. It's big business working with the government, just as Nazi Germany once did. You have 9,000 plus people living on top of each other in these tiny units and with no labor regulations, and they have lockdowns that are bitterly unending, going back to the COVID pandemic, a pandemic which they clearly did with people like Dr. Fear, who pumped our taxpayer money into gain-of-function research. It's amazing. It was all conspiracy theories way back when, but now we've been able to uncover the truth, and what a time to be alive. But we were all born for such a time as this, to speak up and to do something about within the framework of our government, something our founders blessed us with nearly 250 years ago, coming up into next year. Trade discussions with China have been constructive following the administration's announcement of many successful trade deals, and each round of negotiations with the Chinese has built on each other. A lot of this led by Jamison Greer at U.S. Trade and the great Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, further strengthening the cooperation and implementation to work towards the balanced trade with a key trading partner. And President Trump says we're getting along with China very well. So we'll see more developments with that as President Trump will deliver remarks at 11 a.m. from the Kennedy Center. Should be a star-studded event. Thank you to our sponsors here on the right side of history, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You don't want these IBMs, it's these insurance companies that are double-dipping with other pharmacies just down the street from you. And so if they control it, they can keep you away from these great life-saving medications like ivermectin and mebendazole, now going for 25% off. Code RSBN10 for an additional 10% off. So this is a great sponsor here on the right side of history. Think about this. With the flooding that just happened in Milwaukee, it had to cancel the Wisconsin State Fair. We know what happened in the great Lone Star State of Texas, the flooding of the Guadalupe River. When those events happen, are you prepared? Because you might not be able to get down the street to your pharmacy that actually might be implementing this as well. So what do you have in your medicine cabinet? Is it empty? Make sure to reach out to this great online pharmacy of doctors, healthcare providers, nurses, and pharmacists who are truly committed to getting you life-saving medication from bacterial and viral infections that are out there in the world. Also easy to carry these medications on the road with you during your summer vacation. So scan that QR code now, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, your true go-to to make America healthy again, and Kalshi.com/RSBN. Who will President Trump pardon this year? And trade on the most important events and those big questions like I just mentioned. Will it be the great Steve Bannon, who has been through hell and back defending the foundational liberties and principles of this great nation? We'll see the video with Peter Navarro, who was also in prison simply for serving in the first administration. He was a political prisoner, like many people have been in this process, just trying to make America great again. But we also have great sports questions like the LA Dodgers. We're in the dog days of summer, winding it down into the Fall Classic as school starts again. Will they repeat the World Series championship just as the Florida Panthers did with the Stanley Cup in hockey in the National Hockey League just months ago? Not an easy feat to do, but questions on sports, culture, music, and everything that is America, both domestically and internationally. Your go-to trade live now. Scan the QR code or visit Kalshi.com/RSBN. At roughly 9:15 on the East Coast, 6:15 on the Golden Coast. Good morning, America. We look forward to President Trump's remarks at the Kennedy Center at 11 o'clock this beautiful morning, Eastern Daylight Time. and a bit overcast today in Washington, D.C., your federal city, which is undoubtedly becoming much safer under this president. In case you missed it on Monday, a large press conference with his national security apparatus, Department of the Interior, and Secretary Doug Burgum, as well as SecDef Pete Hegseth, the chief over at the Pentagon, with Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, Terry Cole, who will now be overseeing the police operations in the federal city of the District of Columbia, who was manning our Parks Police, the oldest federal park system and police force in the country, founded by none other than the father of the country, great general and first president, George Washington. Also, the district attorney, Jeanine Pirro, the great judge from Westchester County, New York, who was tough as nails back in the 80s and 90s. She will not back down in this role and clearly has a passion for that. As President Trump mentioned in between comments from his national security team in the James S. Brady briefing room, and then to yesterday's comments by Jeanine Pirro, it's very simple that the municipality of Washington, D.C., via Muriel Bowser, the city council, putting out really ridiculous laws or simply not even enforcing what's on the books. They allegedly have 3,500 beat officers, but as President Trump mentioned on Monday, quite confused by that number because that should be able to clean it up rather easily. But in the overnight hours, within 48 hours of that press conference, already those agents hitting the ground running, federal agents who are able to clean this up and ultimately get people, sometimes in many cases, the help they need, because you have homeless throughout the district, and it really should not be that way. It's a beautiful place to celebrate our history, conduct our business as a nation, and every one of you visiting it during the summer with your families should not fear shootings that took place. And we even discussed that with the great Ashley Brassfield of the Daily Caller just yesterday. There was a shooting outside of her residence, and she's simply very close to Capitol Hill. That should not be the case when you're going to work and doing what you need to do on a daily basis, because so much of these people who are covering the national scene or simply making America great again, whether they work at the White House, at the Capitol, at the Supreme Court, or any other government agency in D.C., unless you're the real top position, you're not necessarily having security detail. You're not necessarily having a driver bringing you to the front steps of your office, but rather you're taking the Metro system. You are taking Uber or taxi to get where you need to go, and you're not driving yourself. But even dating back to the 90s, 1992, in fact, that election year between President George H.W. Bush and then Governor Bill Clinton of Arkansas, there was a senator from Delaware, the Autopen, just harping as he usually did, but he actually was rather insightful on this one issue. He said, my staff told me, make sure that when you're approaching that red light, actually kind of slow down, never come to a complete stop, because the way the crime is in Washington, D.C., because someone with an armed rifle or any other armed weapon can come and hijack your car and just create a carjacking and create chaos for you as you're simply trying to get through the district. So there's been these issues before, and now we're seeing it worse really than ever before, and the proof is in the pudding simply with the numbers that we even covered yesterday here on the show, that since 2018, these numbers have simply skyrocketed, and that residents are saying things like they need to do more about the juvenile crime. I think it's because they keep letting them go. There's no cash bail that exists, and DC crime is out of control as a result. And this is without question happening in New York City, Chicago, and Los Angeles. And you can have mayors like Brandon Johnson and Karen Bass who will say otherwise. But do you know that Karen Bass, she still won't let people back onto their properties that burned down in the Pacific Palisades? If you remember those fires from earlier in the year, President Trump, one of his first trips, was going out there and was greeted by Governor Newsom at the base of Air Force One. And Governor Newsom staring at the plane saying, I wish I was president. I wish I was president. Well, God help us if anyone like a Kathy Hochul or a J.B. Pritzker or Gavin Newsom does become president, because they will take what they destroyed in their states and bring it to a federal level. But in 2024, Washington, D.C. saw a homicide rate of 27.3 people per 100,000 residents. That's the fourth highest homicide rate in the entire country. It's nearly 6 times higher than New York City, also higher than that of Atlanta, Chicago, and Compton. 3 places that all matter to me, 3 places I've all lived in. Now in Washington, D.C., if it was a state, it would have the highest homicide rate of any state in the entire nation. In 2012 alone, the homicide rate in the federal city was just 13.9 persons per 100,000 residents. Now, Washington, D.C.'s murder rate is roughly 3 times higher than that of Islamabad, Pakistan, and 18 times higher than that of the communist-run paradise of Havana, Cuba. 18 times more dangerous than the island paradise of communism. Its capital, Havana, Cuba. I mean, it's hard to kind of piece that into terms and to real words, because it's hard to wrap your mind around, especially if you live in suburban America or even rural America. But we saw this in the post-George Floyd riots, that this bled into going after police, spitting on them. As President Trump said, they have permission now. If you spit, they are going to hit. And that hit's going to be hard, it's going to be forceful, and deservedly so. Enough is enough. We need to be behind our police officers and those uniformed individuals who have sacrificed so much and in many cases have lost everything, simply trying to enforce the law with government officials who, no pun intended, handcuff them from doing their due diligence and their jobs. Now, there were 29,348 crimes reported in D.C. alone. That bleeds into the Maryland and Virginia suburbs, including 3,469 violent offenses, 1,026 assaults with a dangerous weapons, 2,113 robberies, and over 5,000 vehicle thefts. It's crazy numbers, as we have people who are true victims of all this. 1,500 violent crimes and nearly 16,000 total crimes this year alone. And we're just in August. We're still in the summer. There have been nearly 100 homicides, including the fatal shootings of honest, innocent civilians like 3-year-old Honesty Cheadle and 21-year-old Capitol Hill intern Eric Tarpian Jaquin. Should not be happening in America. And President Trump addressing this immediately and swiftly, specifically in Los Angeles with those riots, and now in the federal city where home rule is enacted. And it should be that way. And thanks be to God that he's cloaked his protection over us as we travel there, covering this government for you. And it will only be safer and more enjoyable as a result. Thank you to our sponsors here on the right side of history, angelpaste.com. Experience the miracle cream as I have here on the network. You've seen me try the original, the OG, the vitamin B infused miracle cream that you see right there. And this is non-GMO, it's no chemicals. So sometimes you go down the street to the store and you end up picking up a lotion, whatever it might be, and then it's riddled with all of these dyes and fragrances and things that you don't recognize. Then you wonder, well, maybe I shouldn't be putting this on my skin. Is this okay for my body to absorb? And in a lot of cases, rashes come as a result or allergic reaction. You don't have to worry about that with the Christian-owned, veteran hiring angelpaste.com. So experience the miracle today at that website. They have an orange option that is an immunity booster. They also have a natural mosquito repellent and a facial spray that you can use to go paint the town red for guys and gals. And as most of you know, I was on a recent fishing trip and I was using this great product. And guys, do not worry, because you can still grip that tackle box and use the miracle cream known as Angel Paste. So visit angelpaste.com for all of these amazing different products and to support good people out of Spring, Texas. It's the Houston Metroplex off of the Gulf of America and the Lone Star State of Texas. And while you're at that, taking care of your skin health, why not your gut? And especially with covepure.com/RSBN. Did you know that Utah and Florida, they have passed legislation to get rid of the fluoride and the chemicals, the pesticides that are in our water, the alarm bells that were sounded by Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. way back years ago, way before he was in government service, but as an attorney fighting the big corporations who were dumping chemicals into our water supply. He is an American hero, just as his father was, just as his uncle was. Drink pure, live pure, and get $200 off of what matters. covepure.com/RSBN. JAMA Pediatricians just put together an amazing study with doctors as well, that if people are drinking from the tap, specifically children, they can go down a full 2 points in IQ based on the fluoride components in your water, let alone the pesticides, let alone the hard metals that can exist in certain areas. We saw what happened in Flint, Michigan as well with that catastrophe just a number of years ago. So you could choose to have toothpaste that has sodium fluoride in it. I personally have Tom's, so I make sure that that's not in my toothpaste and going into or around my body. But a lot of people simply want to drink clean, pure drinking water. It's your right as an American. We're in a first world country. Let's start acting like it. covepure.com/RSBN is your go-to. And look how tiny it is. It could sit right on your corner of your cabinet or on the counter in the kitchen. Very easy to accompany any other appliance and not take up too much space. So protect what matters. I have a reverse osmosis system myself, so I'm very passionate about this. Get $200 off covepure.com/RSBN. As we reach the bottom of the hour, so roughly in 90 minutes or so, we will see President Trump delivering remarks again from the Kennedy Center. Lots of announcements today. He's very active on Truth Social. We'll share some of that with you, from great trade deals to the great commentary coming as a result of 48 hours ago, that big press conference on Monday that had countless media outlets in there, even some legacy media rolling their eyes. And why would you roll your eyes at the President of the United States? If you agree with him or not, I think he's proven that he's quite the deal maker. Even our friend over at another network was dealing with those goofs and those commentators that so call themselves experts, claiming that President Trump doesn't deserve the Nobel Peace Prize and that somehow these other countries are not nominating him for that. Well, he's basically solved 7 to 8 major conflicts over the course of the last 3 months, if not less, more like 2 months. This president is nonstop, and he's committed to making American music and art and culture great again. You see that right there, shared on True Social by the White House. The Prime Minister of Armenia, joined by Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, the government of Pakistan, among others. You have congresswomen and congressmen who are nominating him as well, from Georgia to New York, all the way out west. President Trump deserves this Nobel Peace Prize, and a big part of that will be how culture is reshaped at the Kennedy Center, a wonderful institution and a wonderful facility honoring the arts and also honoring the 35th President of the United States, who was committed clearly to the arts and arts education within our schools, something that I have greatly benefited from in my career, and really a joy that adds years to your life. Do you know if you sing on a regular basis, it can add 20 years of your life? You don't have to be a professional. Sing in the shower, sing with your friends, sing at church. So open up that hymnal and enjoy what God has blessed us with and bestowed us with. And you know, the one who sings actually prays twice. So make sure you do that as President Trump gears up for a great remark and session over visiting the Kennedy Center, a crown jewel of the federal city. Now we'll take a quick commercial break. We'll be right here with you 90 minutes from now. President Trump delivering remarks at the Kennedy Center. Stick with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network live, as President Trump will deliver remarks at 11 o'clock Eastern, and that will be 8 o'clock on the Golden Coast. So we hope you're enjoying some coffee on this fine morning. I have mine with me as we break down all of the incredible elements of this ongoing week in your federal city. Sometimes it's hard to really focus in the summertime because you're busy. You're out there with family and friends. You're in the hustle and bustle. We see it on campus right now. I was out for a run the last couple of evenings, and all of the great students and their parents, getting them all settled in at the dorms, the apartments around this beautiful and, quite frankly, loveliest village on the plains in Auburn, Alabama. Auburn University ready to go for football season, as I'm sure you are in your neck of the woods. But while you're enjoying that, always important to turn on your go-to live desk here at Right Side Broadcasting Network in order to keep up with the breaking events happening within the United States. And now vehicle theft in Washington, D.C., as the White House has recorded and shared with these really staggering numbers, more than 3 times the national average. So if you're out there in a big urban center, I'm sure it's of some concern that you might be carjacked. We've seen this in America's big cities, and that this ranks amongst the most dangerous cities in the world. Carjacking is increasing 547% from 2018 to 2023 alone. And that in 2024, there were triple the number of carjackings compared to 2019. Now, these statistics are not only troubling on their own, but they are also very likely and significantly understate the actual amount of crime happening in D.C. So only about half of the crimes reported in all of America become that, reported, whether it's to local law enforcement, to media, and are actually dealt with. You see, it's a major problem, and something that's warned about on the college campuses when it comes to a number of different violent crimes. So make sure you talk to your student about remaining safe on campus. This is one of the safest here just down the street from us, and thanks be to God for that. But it's always remaining vigilant. It's walking in groups. It's also, take the earbuds out. That's another thing that really grinds my gears. When you're out there working out, unless you're in a gym surrounded by bright lights and amongst a lot of people, just why in the heck are you out there walking or running and I can hear the music coming out of your earbud as I'm passing you? There's no way you can really deal with someone who might come up from behind and sucker punch you. We saw this in Cincinnati. And these poor people, Holly, we don't know her last name for safety of the children, single mom of 3, her youngest is 5, experiencing PTSD right now because her mom was sucker punched roughly a week and a half ago after celebrating a birthday with friends out in Cincinnati. And we saw the reaction of the mayor, the city councilwoman, a police chief, who are frankly really should not run for re-election and should be terminated by the people, because it's egregious, the fact that police, as great as they are, as much as we support them here at the network, the department failed in that moment. The fact that that woman had to take an Uber, and we saw videos and pictures of her back to safety, there was no police report done. So this is clearly to the point of the White House. This is something that's happening in the United States, that these violent crimes are going unreported. And again, this individual that sucker punched her, it's clear as day on the video that's filmed, and these people are filming this without intervening, which is amazing in its own right, but we have evidence now that this individual with a rap sheet longer than most criminals was released from Fulton County's prison system. Why was that, Fannie Willis? The district attorney that was too busy hoarding gobs and gobs of money, including campaign cash. She said it on the stand during the investigations that she actually hoards money, including campaign cash. Last time I checked, that's a campaign violation. If I would have done that in my state rep race, I'd most likely be heavily fined and or serving jail time for that. But I guess if you're the liberal DA of Fulton County, Georgia, you get to have that liberal privilege. And the individual that her office released ends up going to Cincinnati, Ohio, looking for trouble and apparently waiting for white people outside of the bar. So perhaps that's a civil rights case. Perhaps that's a hate crime. We know if Benjamin Crump was involved, that he would be prosecuting that if it was the other way around. But I digress when it comes to that, because the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C., its leadership is allegedly cooking the books. And that's why this home rule federal government, now under Terry Cole and under the purview of different offices ranging from the Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon to the Attorney General's office and the Department of Justice, will be able to implement and oversee and cross-reference just what exactly is happening in the federal city. Now, most residents do not feel safe, as we covered that with their quotes over the course of the last couple of broadcasts. And according to local news, WUSA TV, in fact, stating that D.C. residents voice frustration over rising violence, questioning police statistics, and the demanding of real action to make neighborhoods feel safe again. And my question for you, the viewers, would you want to deal with these daunting jobs, the reality that this president deals with on a daily basis? He said on the campaign trail, I could be out in the ocean, I could be on the beach letting those beautiful waves hit me in the face, all of the salt and the sand, and a favorite non-alcoholic drink in his hand. But instead, he wanted to return to serve the American people and complete the job that began over a decade ago in 2015 when he came down the golden escalator with our wonderful and lovely First Lady Melania Trump, who is crushing it once again. It's nice to have a competent president, someone who's not an auto pen, and someone who actually clearly has respect for her spouse. I think we could say that now with everything that Dr. Jill Biden, in fact, could have been the acting auto pen, the acting president. Somehow they used the 25th Amendment without going through Congress or without informing Congress that he clearly had cognitive decline. So we see all of that in this very interesting time, a golden era, and thank God that President Trump is back at the reins of this great country in order to make it great again in the golden era, in America's 250th celebration as we approach the 4th of July next year. And breaking this week, that celebration will be at the White House. And UFC's very own Dana White confirming that there will be fight night at the White House on America's 250th birthday, right on the White House lawn. Sure to be a star-studded event. And it will probably be too soon before that beautiful ballroom will be erected, but we look forward to everything that's coming there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, if you want to drop a few extra pounds, why not? Who doesn't? Especially in these end of the summer months, boost energy levels. We have a new sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's Pure Health. You can visit them at purehealthresearch.com. 35% off. Scan that QR code now. You will reduce swelling in your legs and feet using this great product. And first, it's a liver health formula that is so important for gut health and overall health because many suffer from fatty liver disease or simply a slow liver and you go out and have a couple of drinks or just overeat a bit and you have that fatigue and that sluggish nature. Now, fat deposits in the liver can pile on the pounds and again create that fatty liver disease that I was mentioning and making you simply feel tired. Now, in a customer survey, almost 60% of surveyors and customers with this great company reported better weight management and 87% reported more energy. So glowing numbers. Now next is the lymph support system. Now the natural ingredients in the lymph system support has gently flushed extra fluid and toxins out of the body, along with all 45 plus health supplements at this great company. You could visit them at purehealthresearch.com. And that lymph system that we have, if you ever read about it, it really has a beautiful way to cleanse your system, but also toxins can get through and cancers can spread throughout the body via that system. So good to add these supplements here. Go research what this great company is providing at purehealthresearch.com. 35% off with Right Side Broadcasting Network, a great sponsor now here on the network, and also, of course, mypillow.com/RSBN. The free shipping sale, as President Trump put it, the master marketer of getting his product out there and getting you a good night's sleep. Ultimately, it's Mike Lindell. You can support him and Right Side Broadcasting Network by visiting mypillow.com/RSBN and saving with code RSBN. Very easy to remember. MyPillow bed sheets, they are now as low as $24.98. All sizes, all colors. The multi-use MyPillow 2.0, now under $10, $9.98. Why don't you give them a call today, 800-836-7566. Support Mr. Mike Lindell and Right Side Broadcasting Network by visiting mypillow.com/RSBN. He is the purveyor of free speech, the defender of election integrity, and I've been encouraging it here on the show. We'd love to see him as governor of Minnesota or even in public office because he is someone who brings common sense on a daily basis and proudly displays that beautiful cross that you can now get for 50% off, and that's a male and female version of both of those. Support Mike Lindell and the Right Side of History, mypillow.com/RSBN. Over 2,000 items on that great website. Thank you, sir, for your sponsorship as we are covering all things President Donald Trump, Vice President Vance, and your Congress, the government you put into place on November 5th. And wages are growing as inflation remains low and stable, something the legacy media might not necessarily talk about when they're grabbing a cup of joe. No pun intended for that specific morning show. Now, today's CBI report is revealing that inflation has beat market expectations once again, remaining stable, and President Trump is committed to strengthening the dollar and committing more money into your wallet that you work hard for. Now, with the one big beautiful bill, in fact, that was signed into law on the 4th of July, this is lowering costs for people. There's no tax on tips, and also the average family of 4, mom and dad, and 2 kiddos at home, they are bringing in approximately $10,900 more of their earned income. So plenty of spending prowess and things that are needed, although it is going down the cost of goods. You have battles happening right now as we bring back wealth into the United States. So it's good to see egg prices going down. It is good to see as well oil prices, gas prices going down as well. Things that skyrocketed over the course of the Otto Pence administration. President Trump's tariffs are raking in billions of dollars. In fact, small business optimism is at a 5-month high as a result, and real wages are rising in the United States of America. The American people have rightfully put their trust in President Trump's America First agenda, and that is making America wealthy again, according to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who is the superstar, as President Trump puts it. Where's my superstar? That's what he says, and she is always there at his right-hand side to get the job done and communicate it better than anyone else has from that podium in the James S. Brady briefing room. Now, here's what you need to know, that since President Trump took office, inflation is tracking at 1.9%. It's low, it's stable, it's steady for the American people. Real average weekly earnings increased in July. Americans' wages are up 1.3% over the course of his tenure and increased since last month as well. Now, wage growth for American workers beating inflation while Americans are getting more hours at work. Prices for everyday goods continue to decline just in time for back-to-school shopping. Energy prices falling in July, and gasoline now down over 10%, which is down 2.5% over the last year. This includes propane as well. And we know that from summer travel. Whether it's plane, train, or automobile, the most Americans hitting the road this summer for their holidays, the most since July 2021, in fact, when that was that second wave of the pandemic and all of the mess that happened, especially in the blue states. And I have to give credit where credit's due to many Southeast governors, including people like Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp in the Peach State, and the Free Sunshine State of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis. They were brave in reopening their economies and saying, we're going to allow people to make that choice. I was in the middle of a situation where I was simply let go because of a mandate. And then fortunately, another employer, in fact, a mayor of a major city that President Trump will be visiting on Friday, said, you know what, people can make a choice, whether it's private life, whether it's public entities. You have bodily autonomy, and you should make the best decision for your body with your healthcare provider. I thought that was a mantra on the left, but I guess it only means when there's someone else's body within the body. But I won't go down that rabbit hole at the moment. We're talking egg prices falling again, nearly 20% since President Trump took office. Smartphones, they're down 14.7%. Fuel oil, 2.9%. Energy commodities down 9%. Hotels, nearly 5%. Education and communication commodities, 4%. Shipping fares, 5%. Propane, 2.5%, as I mentioned. Internet services, roughly 2.5%. Non-prescription drugs, almost 2%, including butter and margarine, right at that 1.8%. Frozen veggies down over 2%, and tinned fish and peanut butter around that 1.3 to 3.3% respectively. Now, shelter inflation, the largest contributor to overall inflation at its lowest levels since October of 2021. This was a huge problem in Anchorage, Alaska, when I covered the local politics. They used the old hockey arena that was no longer in use for a temporary shelter, which was a massive mistake, using those federal COVID funds. It led to things like skyrocketing inflation locally, but also those who were staying there, in many cases, violent crime happening as a result in the nooks and crannies. They had men and women together, and we covered all of that when I was in local media up in the great state of Alaska. But I was just flabbergasted by local officials making that decision to use federal funds in the COVID era, and as a result, rape, murder, and terrible things happening at that fine stadium that I believe is now open again for hockey, but hard to believe what we've gone through in the last 5 years, especially with AutoPenn's incompetence. Now, the small business optimism reached a 5-month high. According to Bloomberg, sentiment among U.S. small businesses climbed to a 5-month high in July as owners grew more upbeat about the economic outlook, fueling a pickup in expansion plans. So this president, this administration, focusing on streamlining and bringing down the cost of government, in turn, that you can have more in your pocket that you have worked hard for, because that's been the biggest complaint in the last really decade. The growing deficits, the FDR model that was used by Barack Hussein Obama, that created a slow economic recovery out of the major recession and what was nearly a depression back in 2008. And frankly, George W. Bush should have allowed the free market to do just that, freely recover itself. But it's been too much government involvement, too much government regulation, as President Ronald Reagan would speak on. It's not the people are living too well, it's the government living too well, and the hidden tax of inflation that causes the skyrocketing cost of goods and hyperinflation that you see in communist nations like Venezuela and Cuba, where their people are in an amazing amount of poverty. A microcosm of that, you can look at the Golden State of California. What is the problem there? It's they're bleeding out the middle class, or even the city of Chicago. If you look at a heat map of economic prowess and dollars coming in for private and public entities, NGOs, to big corporations, and then the worker, that was once the city of broad shoulders, a middle-class city, once a Democrat Party that truly represented the middle class. But say your average salary here is around $80,000 in Chicago or California, could easily lead to homelessness as a result of the cost of simply living in those cities, from rent or a mortgage to just trying to remain afloat. And this is not even someone who's necessarily married with a family on that one income, but just by themselves. And this president attempting to change that with the tariffs, with the new trade deals, which will ultimately lead to domestic sovereignty and international security as a result of not only securing our borders, but bringing more wealth home here in the United States. So as the panicans say that things will go away, or that we won't have the people to be in our pistachio farms. No, you actually have to hire people that need life-giving wages, that need real-time wages that they can actually raise a family on. And it's good that places like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce can no longer take advantage of people who are here illegally. It's a form of work trafficking. So you have the horrible scourge of sex trafficking that we know exists. This administration finding over 10,000 children that were lost, 300,000 in the prior administration, according to Borders Czar Tom Homan, giving us that data in real time. But what about all of the work trafficking and the labor trafficking that took place, and people being handed over cash that working between $1 to $4 per hour? That's an absolute atrocity. And sadly, there were Republicans and Democrats in Washington advocating for that. And organizations like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce really should apologize and be ashamed of themselves for what they did there. Now, President Trump continues the suspension of these heightened tariffs on China in order to bring prosperity to both nations. Now, as we break all of that down, we have roughly 1 hour from now, President Trump delivering remarks at 11 a.m. Eastern and 8 o'clock on the West Coast. So stay tuned with us roughly 67 minutes from now as we cover all of his remarks from the Kennedy Center and bring you some great truths that he's put out over the course of the last several hours. Always very active late at night and early in the morning. So good to catch the president's comments. So thank our sponsors here on the right side of history, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Now 25% off of ivermectin, mebendazole, also RSBN 10. That code will give you an additional 10% off of these great life-saving medications. We're talking also NAD+, methylene blue, and over 200 essential medications, antibiotics, emergency medical kits that you could take with you on the road, in addition to having them stocked up in your medicine cabinet, something that's really not an option to be unprepared anymore in 2025, given what happened in Milwaukee, those crazy storms. I drove through Wisconsin, right through Madison, and that water was coming down hard during my vacation. And Milwaukee, the Wisconsin State Fair was canceled as a result of that, cut short. We saw what happened in the Lone Star State of Texas with the Guadalupe River and the destruction of the Mystic Camp and all those who are still reeling from all of that. So you have to be prepared at home, because the pharmacy could shut down, or you could simply have these PBMs, these insurance agents that are double dipping and owning pharmacies and don't want you to have life-saving medication that has been proven to stand the test of time for as long as it's been available. Ivermectin, mebendazole, now 25% off thanks to Michael Kunzler and the great doctors and healthcare providers, nurses, and pharmacists at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, your go-to online pharmacy. Scan that QR code now and use code RSBN10 for that extra 10% off. If you like what you see with your go-to live desk, Right Side Broadcasting is now a decade old, and we will keep going at it, bringing you unbridled access to your 45th and 47th Commander-in-Chief, the 50th Vice President of the United States, and the 119th Congress, with scenes there from the campaign trail. I remember that, North Carolina. That was a blistering hot day, but always great to be with you, the American people, and to hear your comments and your, quite frankly, smart commentary, better than most, better than those so-called elites, those elected officials, those politicians, and the sports, the athletes, and musicians that they think they're so great. And they are great for what they can do, the great blessings God has bestowed upon them, but also you, the American people, using common sense to bring back constitutional, Republican form of government in this golden era. Support us right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, not only as the Rally Network, but as your go-to live desk as we've transitioned into new programming. rsbnetwork.com/donate. You can also text RSBN to 801-801, and we humbly ask for that support because we're up against legacy corporations that sometimes skew the truth. We've seen that on a regular basis over the last decade with the Russia hoax. Many have not apologized for being on the wrong side of history. And if you like the old school way of sending in a check, we also have an address, and it's a P.O. box. You can go to 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6. That's Box 344, the loveliest village on the plains. Auburn, Alabama, 36830. That address one more time for you. 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. Thank you for your support on the right side of history, and we'll keep on keeping on as we're getting close to that 10 o'clock hour on the East Coast. 1 hour from now, President Trump will give remarks from the great Kennedy Center, and we look forward to that. Now on Truth Social, Peter Navarro, leading the Office of Management and Budget, someone who has suffered greatly by fighting for these populist principles that date back to the founding of our constitutional republic. Did you know that? People like Henry Clay and William McKinley, Abraham Lincoln, many giving their lives for this movement, this populist movement, American economic prowess, something that's not necessarily taught in all history books. And President Trump, the modern version of these great leaders, please feel free to enjoy this Truth Social video shared by @RealDonaldTrump, the 45th and 47th Commander-in-Chief, highlighting all of the great wins we're having in 200 plus days, thanks to Special Advisor Peter Navarro.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy. Good.
True to his promise on the campaign trail and to address a growing national emergency over America's chronic and massive trade deficits, President Trump has imposed tariffs on countries around the world. The Trumpnomics' goal is not only to reduce America's trade deficit, it is to defend American workers and factories against unfair trade practices while encouraging trillions of dollars of investment in new American plant and equipment. The policy is working for America, and no one should be surprised by this. This is because before the word tariff became synonymous with President Donald Trump, generations of American statesmen built the foundation for today's America First agenda. Their ideas were rooted in three core principles: sovereignty, security, and the protection of American workers. Economic nationalism, also known as economic populism, isn't new. It's a return to the proven economic model that built the greatest industrial power in world history. It started with Alexander Hamilton, the original architect of American economic nationalism. In his Report on Manufactures, Hamilton laid it out clearly. The United States needed tariffs to defend its young industries from British domination and to secure true independence, not just politically, but economically. Hamilton knew that if America relied on foreign powers for manufactured goods, it would always be vulnerable. Decades later, Henry Clay carried Hamilton's vision forward. His American system prioritized three things: a strong national bank, major infrastructure investment, and above all, protective tariffs. Clay said it best in 1824. The tariff is to tax the produce of foreign industry with the view of promoting American industry. That's the same logic President Trump used nearly 200 years later when he invoked Section 232 to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum to stop foreign overproduction and dumping from crushing American jobs. Like Trump, Clay faced fierce opposition. The Southern-led nullification crisis, sparked by the tariffs of 1828 and 1832, nearly tore the country apart. But the principle held: protect American industry or risk dependence on foreign powers. Then came Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president. Lincoln proudly called himself an old line Henry Clay Whig and understood the value of tariffs. During the Civil War, tariff revenues helped finance the Union Army. And after the war, they fueled a rapid industrial expansion. Lincoln knew that protecting American industry meant protecting American workers and protecting the American nation itself. Fast forward to the late 19th century. William McKinley, son of an iron worker and disciple of Clay, took up the mantle. In 1890, he passed one of the highest protective tariffs in U.S. history, with duties exceeding 50%. In his 1896 campaign, McKinley declared, "I'm a tariff man standing on a tariff platform." McKinley won, and under his leadership, the United States became the world leader in agriculture, mining, and manufacturing. He credited that success directly to the protective trade system.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly. With today's action, we are finally going to be able to make America great again, greater than ever before.
The fake news wants us to believe these are fringe ideas, but history teaches us this is the American tradition. President Trump's trade agenda, especially his bold use of tariffs, draws along this long line of economic nationalism. From Hamilton to Clay, from Lincoln to McKinley, and now President Donald John Trump, the core idea has remained the same. Put American workers first, build American industry, protect American sovereignty. This is the heart of the America First agenda. It's not new. It's certainly not radical. It's the most American economic policy in history. 5 leaders, 1 philosophy. Make tariffs great again. Make America great again. Trump promises made. Trump promises always kept.
Thank you to the White House Office of Trade and Manufacturing and Special Assistant to the President, Peter Navarro. And just a side personal story with the great Peter Navarro. Always an absolute hoot to connect with him at a conference, or I had the privilege of helping him with his Truth Social account several years ago. And he'll answer the phone, just go for McNeely. It's Navarro. I mean, he's just a great guy who's been through so much, including cavity searches and unjust imprisonments because of economic populism and because of this America First nationalist movement. And nationalism is not a bad word. And just like William McKinley, I am a tariff man, and I will stand on tariffs just as that brave man did. And those gentlemen, specifically Abraham Lincoln and William McKinley, ultimately giving their lives for the country and having their lives cut short by assassins' bullets. But these are great leaders in American history, from Alexander Hamilton to Henry Clay and now to President Donald Trump. This will make America wealthy again and make America great again. As we thank our sponsors here on the right side of history, angelpaste.com. The Miracle Cream, I've used it here at the network. It's a Christian-based company that hires veterans out of Spring, Texas, and really around the country. They just happen to be headquartered in the Houston Metroplex off the Gulf of America. So they know a thing or two about mosquitoes, and especially this time of year in the summer months, how about you grab their natural mosquito repellent as you enjoy your summer barbecues with hot dogs and ice cold beer, burgers, and all of the good things that make America fun and prosperous. But sometimes you get that goofball at the party that might spray deep woods and just all through the air, and then that gets in your drink, it gets on your food. It's not a good thing. Don't have to worry about that with Angel Paste, because all of their products, no chemicals, non-GMO, very healthy, especially around the kids and the pets, as you're trying to protect yourself from those flying pests that might be around during these hot and humid months. Again, experience the miracle at angelpaste.com. They even have a facial spray, so you can go paint the town red. And with all of their great products, you can investigate and invest in those now at angelpaste.com. And while you take care of your skin and look the best while you go out for a night on the town, why not throw in a couple of bets and trades at kalshi.com/RSBN. You can use that QR code there now, or visit, again, the website kalshi.com/RSBN. Trade on the most important events. So you have questions like, who will President Trump pardon this year? Will the Dodgers go back-to-back in the World Series? Will Elon Musk end up making a third party, an American party? I hope not, because what kind of party will that be? As it was mentioned in the Peter Navarro video just moments ago, Abraham Lincoln was really that old school Whig that was absorbed into a new party known as the Republican Party. But ultimately, we really are a two-party system, and we know what the Democrats want to do. They want to impeach President Trump for just about anything, and they'll make up a case against him, as we saw in the first term with Russia, and all of that. So you can answer these questions and actually trade and bet on them at kalshi.com/RSBN. Politics, culture, music and sports, and more. Everything affecting America domestically and abroad. kalshi.com/RSBN. And as we cover all of these pertinent and important issues at the White House, in the federal city, both domestically and abroad, with a number of items as President Trump is approaching, really completing his 20 promises made, promises kept that led to the Republican policy and the platform at the Republican National Convention last year, just days after a would-be assassin attempted to take President Trump's life. But he stood right back up and said, fight, fight, fight. And if you look over that list, he's accomplished so much of that. Really zero illegal crossings over the course of the last 3 months to economic freedom and billions coming back into the United States and resolving war conflicts, some that have lasted decades, if not generations, and President Trump bringing those great leaders to the table for economic prosperity, not only here at home, but abroad. And now the big item on the table, it's Russia's peace with the Ukraine. And can that be met? I believe it can with this peacemaker in chief, this deal maker in chief, as he noted at the press conference on Monday. That he'll be meeting with President Putin of Russia in Anchorage, Alaska. Stay tuned for that coverage that we very well may have on this network. It's going to be an important one, and we'll see how the deal making continues. Zelensky wants in on this meeting, the White House extending that olive branch, but this was at the request of President Putin, and it might be better for President Putin and President Trump to sit down, have that conversation, gives President Trump a better idea, even more than on the phone, of where the Russian leader now stands on all of this. But we know just how sad and how terrible this has been. And for the panicans, especially in legacy media, saying, again, Russia, Russia, Russia 2.0, we know the hoax that was pushed out by Barack Hussein Obama's cabinet and the auto pen and crooked Hillary Clinton spying on the Trump Tower, from the communist John Brennan to James Comey, who wants to 8647 with seashells as he goes strolling down the seashore as a lonely panican, a failed FBI director in his own right. We know that now legacy items are commenting that President Trump has only served Putin. Well, how does that explain the sale of Patriot missiles to Europe via NATO to protect the Ukraine against these awful attacks that Russia perpetuates on innocent civilians and nursing homes and schools? They're not just Scud missiles that go awry. It's innocent people that are targeted. And that's the sadness about all of this, because you have Russia and Ukraine, great cultures, great people, very much like traditional Americans, God-fearing, beautiful, family-oriented, wonderful individuals who are now living under the cloak of two failed leaders, two maniacs who, quite frankly, can't stand one another. The only thing they share in common is their first names, Vladimir. And both very ugly names. I'm sorry if you do have the name Vladimir, because they've really stained what are two iconic countries. And as President Trump has put it, some of the most gorgeous buildings throughout world history being knocked down as a result of this war. This president hates the killing of people. He wants the killing to stop. And sadly, some legacy items, it's almost as if they want the American president to fail. It's almost as if they want the United States to fail with their perpetuating of false narratives. So Friday begins truly the work to right the wrongs and to work towards peace. And given historical conflicts like India and Pakistan, or what happened in the Rwanda and the DCR, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, to now Azerbaijan and Armenia. These people fought for years and years and years, generations of hatred. President Trump ending it with that handshake and coming together. You can remember the peace accords from Camp David with Jimmy Carter, really the highlight of his administration. And to give credit where credit's due, bringing Israel and Egypt to the table, that took years to get there. And this president seems to do it overnight, post the Abraham Accords, throughout the Middle East, and with the peace through strength mentality that was first brought to the diplomatic stage by President Ronald Reagan. Well, this is peace through strength on steroids, and we need that from not only securing our borders, but an economic policy that will ensure our prosperity as an American nation, but also for those other people around the world who are truly seeking freedom. As you see a live shot there from the Kennedy Center, where President Trump will be speaking at the top of the hour. Let's run through again the suspension of heightened tariffs on China, as President Trump puts it. Now, this week, President Trump signed an executive order that will continue the suspension of heightened tariffs on China so that they will ultimately come to the table. They have been their backs against the ropes, considering the amazing work this president has done as dealmaker in chief, especially in the Indo-Pacific, with trade deals from Thailand to the Philippines, also with Vietnam. Now, this action is necessary to facilitate ongoing and productive discussion with China about remedying the trade imbalances and the unfair trade practices, expanding market access for the American worker on exports, and aligning the United States on national security and ultimately economic matters. Now, the United States and China have engaged in multiple rounds of productive negotiations to address trade reciprocity and national security issues. The United States will therefore maintain its 10% suspension on these imports, as outlined in the executive order of 14298 on this is until November 10th of this year. The current 10% reciprocal tariff remains intact. This will broaden and strengthen economic encouragement and trade policies that support the America First agenda, our middle class, our manufacturing, and stop undercutting them. The United States will continue trade talks with China to promote fair trade practices and support American workers. Now, working towards this balanced trade approach, it's truly free trade through fair trade. It's not the clanking of champagne glasses with once Vice Premier, now Chairman Xi Jinping, who is the leader of the Chinese Communist Party. Back in 1999 and 2000, when Bill Clinton was president, then Otto Penn, senator from Delaware, was welcoming and ushering in China into the World Economic Organization, saying that a rising China is good for America. Come on, folks. No, it's not. Why don't you go have your ice cream cone on Rehoboth Beach? Maybe your son will be enjoying some of his favorite drugs while you're enjoying your ice cream cone. But we know that this president committed to not doing anything that ridiculous and not taking a break in the process by renegotiating these very complex trade deals. Now, addressing national emergency involving our growing and persistent trade deficit with foreign trading partners such as China and the consequences of that deficit. Senator Rand Paul has been talking about this for years now, even when he ran for president back in 2016, that the greatest threat to the American institution, the economy, our national security as a whole is from within and through our trade deficit with China. $36 trillion in debt, mostly thank you to neocons and neoliberals over the course of the last 30 years. But President Trump is ensuring that our trade policy works for the American economy, the American worker, and levels the playing field for all producers by strengthening America's defense industrial base. We'd like to thank our sponsors here at the right side of history. Always important to visit our new great sponsor, purehealthresearch.com. Do you know about fatty liver disease? Something that most Americans, I think, are becoming more aware of on a daily basis. You will love these 2 American-made supplements that it's a true fact. If you're just having a little bit too much to drink, perhaps very fatty foods, you might have that all deposited and cleared through your liver, and that can lead to feeling slower, having less energy, just not being your normal self. And this first liver health formula will be able to streamline that. Now, in a customer survey, almost 60% reported that they have better weight management, over 87% noting they have more energy by using the Liver First formula. The fat deposits, again, they can pile up in your liver and make you feel tired or just a little bit like you have that brain fog, that fatigue, and you don't want to get out there and get the job done. Now, next is lymph system support. This is also huge for cleansing your entire system. Through the lymph nodes, you can have very good things traveling through your body, also very bad things like cancer cells. So the natural ingredients in the lymph system support helps gently flush extra fluid and toxins out of the the body. Now you can research here. We have 35% off using code RSBN, purehealthresearch.com right now for a limited time. So get your liver in line, get your lymph system in line, make sure you're fasting as well as getting these health supplements, over 45 in fact, over at purehealthresearch.com. Scan the QR code now, 35% savings. It's a nice way to start off with a new hello from a great new sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. While you're taking care of your insides, make sure that the most vital system of surviving, water, H2O, over 70% of the world is water, and we are actually composed of mostly water as human beings. So protect what matters. Did you know that Utah and Florida passing legislation to get rid of the fluoride out of the tap and pesticides and harmful chemicals? And it makes a lot of sense because covepure.com/RSBN now offering their clear water technologies in this beautiful system for $200 off. Drink pure, live pure, and it is just nice and tiny like that, compact, so you could put that on that kitchen countertop or that table that's right off to the side, not out of the way. And when your friends come over, give them a nice, clean, pure glass of water. Beautiful H2O for you. Now, JAMA pediatricians, pediatrics in fact, JAMA, their scientists, their doctors actually did a study. Did you know that children who regularly drink out of the tap can actually lose 2+ points in their IQ as a result of these harmful chemicals? So Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., who has been warning us of this for years as an attorney took on those big corporations who were dumping toxins into our lakes, rivers, and streams, I think he's justified because the proof is in the pudding. We have seen that now with all of these incredible studies. So again, their clear water technology takes out 99.9% of the harmful toxins in the tap, especially fluoride. And now sometimes it's unavoidable because of big oil, the Rockefellers. You could look up the whole history, but sodium fluoride going into our toothpaste. That's why I use all natural kind of toothpaste to make sure it doesn't go near my body. But you shouldn't be drinking fluoride if you don't want to. And this is why covepure.com/RSBN is your best reverse osmosis system to have with their clear water technologies. Now $200 or $200 off at covepure.com/RSBN. Drink pure, live pure. Check them out today. Thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history as we continue to break down not only the dealings with China, the upcoming visit with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska on Friday, the big, bold, beautiful press conference that was on Monday. Actually, it's been a week of press conferences, including some great interviews here at the network. But think about President Trump with his press conference on Monday, followed by the great superstar, as he puts it, Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, just yesterday. Also followed by the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, really just putting it plainly like she used to do on that primetime show, The Five, on the criminality within the federal city and how that will stop through her office and how it's been neglected over the last few years with neocons and neoliberals simply just trying to climb that ladder. This administration, they really have put their heart on their sleeves. They have left not only peace and tranquility, but in many cases, high-paying jobs in order to make America safe again, make America wealthy again, make America healthy again, and ultimately make America great again. Oh, and by the way, President Trump recently just donated his quarterly earnings once again. He does the job for free, legally taking $1 per the congressional mandate because he said if I gave it all away, they'd probably impeach me for that too. And we know with no hips Hakeem, he would do that if he became Speaker of the House. Let's go to a quick commercial break as we await President Trump at the top of the hour. It'll be 11 o'clock on the East Coast and 8 o'clock on the Golden Coast. Stick with us. We hope you're enjoying your morning coffee with us. Good Morning America. It is your go-to live desk at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Do not turn that dial. We'll be back with you in a moment.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. Happy Wednesday, Hump Day in America, August 13th, 2025. It's a great day to be alive, and it's great to be with you here at Right Side Broadcasting Network's live desk. I'm Robert McNeely as we await for the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to make remarks from the Kennedy Center. We know that this has been a big passion project. The President loves arts. He loves music. As he mentioned, going to see Les Mis on tour with the First Lady, one of our dear friends and colleagues in the media asking, what are your favorite musicals? What are the first musicals you attended back on the Great White Way of Broadway in New York City? And President Trump stating that it was The Phantom of the Opera. A big fan of Andrew Lloyd Webber, and as am I. So, we got to get an Andrew Lloyd Webber song for 1 week on The Voice of Reason, maybe tomorrow. We'll see what happens with all of that as we are awaiting the great 45th and 47th Commander-in-Chief with the seal of the President. Once it's on that podium, that's roughly a 10 to 5 minute warning that he'll be speaking, adorned by the Kennedy Center logo, honoring our 35th President and the uncle of our Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., and the American flags there. It is the golden era, America 250, with a nonstop administration fighting for you. And we are always here with you on that right side of history, covering the important information that you simply won't find anywhere else, especially with the legacy media that likes to create this narrative of panicans, whether it's, oh, these tariffs are terrible. Not true. The proof is in the pudding with the way President Trump has worked towards bringing wealth and safety and security back to this great nation. Also, I got a kick out of the Monday press conference with the legacy individual in the front row, literally rolling his eyes. And I've seen this guy, he stands on the podium and acts like he's holier than thou and smarter than everyone else, and he really is not. But I would never, even if a president that I disagreed with, roll my eyes at the commander-in-chief as he's making clearly the point that he is the deal maker-in-chief and the deals that have led to world peace, whether it be with Armenia and Azerbaijan, India to Pakistan, to Thailand and Cambodia, to Israel and Iran, to now what we will likely see in the coming weeks with Russia and Ukraine. That's been a complicated one, but how does President Trump do it? It's with trade, it's by being a deal maker-in-chief, it's by literally willing to walk away. It's a masterclass, especially if you're in school right now, if you're studying finance or anything where it comes to sales or simply how to run an organization, whether you're in political science to any wealth management to anything you want to do truly in your life when it comes to public and private service. this president is perhaps the one to watch because he gives a daily masterclass on a regular basis, especially how to deal with the panicins out there that sadly dominate our media. But great to be in the new media, bringing you a fresh perspective and the truth. And that's what we care about here at Right Side Broadcasting. Not only your perspective, the viewers, but also where the breadcrumbs truly lead. We're not beholden to the Republican Party. We're not beholden to the Democrat Party. In fact, we are with you, the common sense America, MAGA-loving people, and the populist nationalist movement that is truly saving this country in more ways than one. And it's fun to see it when it's brought into a cultural perspective, like saving this beautiful building that needs the reforms. And now President Trump remarking on Truth Social as well that a number of these items will be met today. So stay tuned for great nominations and great updates on the Kennedy Center that honors not only the best and brightest stars of the stage and the arts in this great country, but also the 35th President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Thank you to our sponsors on the right side of history, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, ivermectin and mebendazole, thanks to Michael Kunzler, the co-owner of this fine organization, and the doctors, nurses, and pharmacists who want you to peacefully and patriotically make America healthy again, starting with your home. Ivermectin, mebendazole now 25% off. Now, code RSBN10 still intact for an additional 10% off. Scan the QR code there. We're talking 200 plus essential medications with mebendazole and ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, NAD+, methylene blue, and emergency medical kits, antibiotics that can be a game changer against bacterial and viral infections in 2025. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, your go-to to protect your health and your family's health. And they're also easy to take with you on the road as you travel, in addition to stocking up those medicine cabinets. And after you take care of your health via these great medicines, why not get the right amount of sleep? I struggle with it myself, but what helped a lot, MyPillow and Mike Lindell with the free shipping sale. Perhaps his greatest sale, the master marketer, as President Trump put it. You can now own the replica My Cross for 50% off. There's a male and female version of what Mike Lindell wears to honor our Lord and Savior. Now, the MyPillow bed sheets also going for $24.98. I mean, that's a great deal with all those different sizes and colors that come in all shapes for you. Now, the multi-use MyPillow 2.0, better than any lunch deal out there, under $10, $9.98. And why not rest your head domestically? The greatest country with God, all things are possible. Great themes on these pillows. You see the Lady Liberty with the American flag honoring this great nation, nearly 250 years young, or just simply those colors of gray, pink, or white, among others. Call today. Don't delay. 800-836-7566. MyPillow.com/RSBN has over 2,000 products that will help with your health by getting you a good night's sleep. And really, you can't have that productive day at work or that present moment to spend with family and friends the next day unless you get a good night rest. Again, MyPillow.com/RSBN. Support Mike Lindell and this go-to live desk, the purveyor of free speech, the master marketer himself, the free shipping sale going on right now, the defender of election integrity. It's Mike Lindell. Thank you, sir, for your sponsorship on the right side of history as this cabinet and this administration continues to put out lofty goals and to work overtime for you, the American people. We will have President Trump at the top of the hour giving remarks directly from the Kennedy Center, which has gone into disrepair and needs a multitude of those beautifications to take place throughout our federal city, but also President Trump to remark on a number of different items. And especially If you have questions on tariffs and economic populism, nationalism, we played it on earlier in the broadcast, but it's worth sharing again. Peter Navarro, the Office of Trade and Manufacturing, and focus on reforming budgets, not only domestically but internationally, really showcases the history of economic populism from Alexander Hamilton to Henry Clay to Abraham Lincoln and William McKinley. President Donald Trump is simply in the lineage of these great leaders, among others, who stood for tariffs to bring wealth into the United States, and several of them ultimately giving their lives for this movement, for putting America first. They really birthed it, dating back to 1788 and even before, in their various leadership roles as Secretary of the Treasury to Speaker of the House to Presidents of the United States. President Trump is in that lineage of that, you can call it old Whig way of thinking, but as Mr. McKinley said in 1896, I am a tariff man and this is the platform I stand on. So do we here at the network, showcasing these great policies that led to blue ribbon commissions prior to the 1913 implementation of the federal income tax, something quite frankly unconstitutional and that should have never happened in the first place, but it was the birth of the so-called progressive globalist movement, which has now led to big government, deep state socialists. That's what they are, communists like Mamdani in New York City. Really grinds my gears, and I need to get off my soapbox and let Peter Navarro, the special advisor and assistant to the President of the United States, explain those amazing economic policies right here in this video.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy. Good.
True to his promise on the campaign trail and to address a growing national emergency over America's chronic and massive trade deficits, President Trump has imposed tariffs on countries around the world. The Trumpnomics' goal is not only to reduce America's trade deficit, it is to defend American workers and factories against unfair trade practices while encouraging trillions of dollars of investment in new American plant and equipment. The policy is working for America, and no one should be surprised by this. This is because before the word tariff became synonymous with President Donald Trump, generations of American statesmen built the foundation for today's America First agenda. Their ideas were rooted in three core principles: sovereignty, security, and the protection of American workers. Economic nationalism, also known as economic populism, isn't new. It's a return to the proven economic model that built the greatest industrial power in world history. It started with Alexander Hamilton, the original architect of American economic nationalism. In his report on manufactures, Hamilton laid it out clearly. The United States needed tariffs to defend its young industries from British domination and to secure true independence, not just politically, but economically. Hamilton knew that if America relied on foreign powers for manufactured goods, it would always be vulnerable. Decades later, Henry Clay carried Hamilton's vision forward. His American system prioritized three things: a strong national bank, major infrastructure investment, and above all, protective tariffs. Clay said it best in 1824. The tariff is to tax the produce of foreign industry with the view of promoting American industry. That's the same logic President Trump used nearly 200 years later when he invoked Section 232 to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum to stop foreign overproduction and dumping from crushing American jobs. Like Trump, Clay faced fierce opposition. The Southern-led nullification crisis sparked by the tariffs of 1828 and 1832, nearly tore the country apart. But the principle held: protect American industry or risk dependence on foreign powers. Then came Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president. Lincoln proudly called himself an old line Henry Clay Whig and understood the value of tariffs. During the Civil War, tariff revenues helped finance the Union Army. And after the war, they fueled a rapid industrial expansion. Lincoln knew that protecting American industry meant protecting American workers and protecting the American nation itself. Fast forward to the late 19th century. William McKinley, son of an iron worker and disciple of Clay, took up the mantle. In 1890, he passed one of the highest protective tariffs in U.S. history, with duties exceeding 50%. In his 1896 campaign, McKinley declared, "I'm a tariff man standing on a tariff platform." McKinley won, and under his leadership, the United States became the world leader in agriculture, mining, and manufacturing. He credited that success directly to the protective trade system.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly. With today's action, we are finally going to be able to make America great again, greater than ever before.
The fake news wants us to believe these are fringe ideas, but history teaches us this is the American tradition. President Trump's trade agenda, especially his bold use of tariffs, draws along this long line of economic nationalism. From Hamilton to Clay, from Lincoln to McKinley, and now President Donald John Trump, the core idea has remained the same. Put American workers first, build American industry, protect American sovereignty. This is the heart of the America First agenda. It's not new. It's certainly not radical. It's the most American economic policy in history. 5 leaders, 1 philosophy. Make tariffs great again. Make America great again. Trump promises made. Trump promises always kept.
Thank you to the Office of Trade and Manufacturing at the White House and Special Assistant and Advisor to the President of the United States, Peter Navarro, for your patriotism, sir, the history lesson, and that tariffs work. If you like what you see here at the network, we have great sponsors, and Kalshi.com/RSBN is the one. After all these tariffs and the one big beautiful bill, maybe you have a few more dollars of your hard-earned wealth that you can trade and bet on big questions this year, like, will President Trump pardon Stephen Bannon, another great patriot like Peter Navarro, who suffered jail time and the attempted suppression of his freedom of speech for standing up for these great reform, populist, economic nationalism principles that are truly making America great again. So scan that QR code now, go to Kalshi.com/RSBN, trade on the most important events, and it's not just politics, it's culture, it's music, it's sports. And with the Fall Classic just around the corner and this last extra push, well, the Los Angeles Dodgers repeat the World Series. We saw that in another major sport with the National Hockey League and the Florida Panthers, President Trump's hockey team, in fact, who went back-to-back with the Stanley Cup. We know they had a lot of fun at their reception at the White House, President Trump inviting them earlier this year. Perhaps they'll get another jersey to display at Mar-a-Lago as they are world champions once again. So trade on the most important events. Take the bets down now, and I'm sure you can have some fun with that regarding fantasy football upcoming as well. Trade live now, kalshi.com/RSBN. And if you like what you see, 10 years running now at Right Side Broadcasting Network, we are your go-to live desk. Support us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network with rsbnetwork.com/donate or text RSBN to 801-801. You can also do it the old school way. Send in that check, money order, or just cold hard cash to 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6. That's Box 344 to the loveliest village on the plains, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. I love this graphic of the views from last year from North Carolina, the Tar Heel State, all the way up to the Badger State. It's your 45th to 47th president and his vice president, the 50th, in fact. J.D. Vance, the heir apparent to President Trump, has aptly agreed. So has Secretary of State Marco Rubio. What are some of your favorite picks for 2028? I know we can't think too far down the road, but RSBN will be right here for you to cover all of that great action in the weeks, months, and years to come. So we are appreciative of that financial support to take on the legacy media that likes to spin and skew or not really dive deep into the issues that matter. Actually, one of the great things we do here is you'll find long-form interviews, deep dive analysis on countless different issues that make a difference for your wallet, that don't go towards the narrative of the neocons or the neoliberals or even Republicans and Democrats in the Beltway who want things to be like they used to be. I saw something recently of the 43rd president was apparently talking about compassionate conservatism, which I really think is simply masking what it truly is meant to be, big government socialism. Because remember, in 2008 with the financial crisis, he got rid of his free market beliefs. He threw out Barry Goldwater's philosophies, the conscience of a conservative. And now you have absolute low energy people like the former lieutenant governor of Georgia, the Peach State, Jeff Duncan, who has become a Democrat recently, and good riddance, thinking about running for governor of Georgia. Go ahead and do it, sir, because the Trump-endorsed Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones this week, I'm sure will clean your clock, just like he did in the SEC playing for those Georgia Bulldogs back in the early 2000s, that Sugar Bowl championship, among others. That'd be a great lineup, if you will. The Burt Jones, the real Republican lieutenant governor, against the former lieutenant governor, now turned Democrat, Jeff Duncan. But we'll see how that race goes, as it's going to be big, these midterms, because President Trump not on the ballot, but his policies clearly are. And you have many term-limited governors, especially throughout the Southeast here in Alabama to Georgia, in the Carolinas down to Florida as well. So some new blood, if you will, coming into the fold as millennials and Gen Z together make up actually the majority of the electorate. I believe that's the first time that the younger ages are overcoming their parents and grandparents in regards to registration of voters. But thank you to really the person who is making a massive difference in all of this, especially in the Commonwealth, Keystone State of Pennsylvania. That's Scott Pressler. He is on the ground registering voters and getting it done for the American people. And we'll dive a little bit more into that on the Voice of Reason, because you've heard about all of these gerrymandering situations going on over the course of the last 2 weeks. And if you are unfamiliar, seems as if Illinois Democrats really expose themselves for what they are and the ridiculous nature of their maps, with 83% of their congressional representation being Democrat, but 44+% voting for President Trump. So how does that work that Illinois has 14 Democrat members of the House of Representatives, only 3 Republicans, when something like that happens? California is very similar, only 9 Republicans in the House, over 40 Democrats representing their big maps, yet they cry because Texas is simply doing what their Constitution demands and their legislature is redrawing appropriately, because we know the 2020 census was riddled with fallacies and mistakes given the pandemic, and that the fact that the census actually counts every able-bodied that's living, breathing, moving in a congressional district. So that included illegal aliens, and that waters down the constitutional premise of one citizen, one vote. Massachusetts practicing this gerrymandering as well. 9 Democrats, no Republicans in Congress, actually 11 in the entirety of Congress with those 2 senators. So it's really strange. Maryland, very similar. Only 1 Republican in the House of Representatives there. So Texas doing what's appropriate. Florida also doing what's appropriate in addressing true representation for their people. But it did not stop Governor Gavin Newsom of California to then make these bizarre nicknames for President Trump. You might have caught him mentioning on Twitter that Donald Taco Trump, as many call him. I've never caught that before, Governor, but okay. Now draw new, more beautiful maps. They will be historic as they will end the Trump presidency. He literally says what they plan to do. If they get the majority in the House of Representatives, they're going to impeach the President of the United States. We saw this, and a big press conference this past week with the powerful Dems and Gavin Newsom, your favorite governor, that will be devastating for MAGA. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Gavin Newsom. He is a snake. He is a chameleon. He is a cartoon artist painting a picture that's rather bizarre. And even though I appreciate the governor's approach to wanting free and fair speech and many voices to dialogue, frankly, he's a much better podcast host. He should do what I do on a daily basis rather than try to run a state, because he's driven the Golden State into the ground. There's no question about that with its regulations to depleting the middle class. The fact that countless people, Californians, now live in Arizona to Idaho and Montana. They'll come as far east to Austin, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia, where Hollywood has really moved to, including the tech industry. And we hope that they stay west of the Mississippi and leave us alone here east of the Mississippi, because it's funny how sometimes Californians, they don't change their social voting habits, and they forget sometimes the reason why they left the Golden State in the first place. Hard to believe that really 75 years later, can you imagine that a once middle-class tax haven in the 1950s, with all of the natural resources, if it was by itself on its own, it'd be the 7th largest economy in the entire world. Once led by the late, great Ronald Reagan. Also home to Yorba Linda, California, which birthed in 1913 when the federal income tax was happening on a farm, a homestead. Richard Milhouse Nixon, one of the greatest diplomats truly this country has ever seen. Sadly, the Watergate scandal engulfing his legacy to a certain extent. But that's all child's play compared to what we have right now in this country with a Russia hoax, with Crossfire Hurricane, what we know with the Steele dossier, and the fact that Barack Hussein Obama and his good comrades really went in the style of an old Soviet Union type of squashing the political opponent. Things that happen in third world nations, things that happen in communist nations. So the Democrat Party of your grandfather, your father even, that's gone, that's dead. Demos is Greek for of the people. It may have been in 1828. It may have been in 1960 and in 1961 when on that January 20th, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy boldly proclaimed, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." Can you imagine any elected Democrat saying that right now? Can you imagine Governor Newsom saying that? Can you imagine Governor J.B. Pritzker saying that? How about Kathy Hochul in New York, the Empire State, which she is driving into the ground mostly because of incompetence? Would Governor Gretchen Whitmer ever say anything like that? You know, and to her credit, she's hoping to make those beautiful waterways in the Wolverine state of Michigan cleaner with the help of the federal government, and President Trump aptly complimenting her regarding all of that. But it remains yet to be seen. And we know that goofball from Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz, the former failed vice presidential candidate, he sure as hell would not ask anyone to do on their own to serve their great nation, he'd ask for that handout. Remember, him and his wife, First Lady of Minnesota, they enjoyed all the tire burning and the smells that came from the George Floyd riots back in the summer of love, 2020. Thank God for President Trump and for Vice President J.D. Vance and this administration, which is making America great again. I can't wait to see what's going to be unveiled today at the Kennedy Center, as we thank our sponsors, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Now 25% off of ivermectin, mebendazole. Code RSBN10 for an extra 10% off. Get all of those extra savings thanks to this amazing company led by Michael Kunzler, the co-owner of allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You have 200 essential medications, and it's NAD plus methylene blue, as well as this ivermectin and mebendazole, as mentioned, with antibiotics that sometimes are not available at your pharmacy because the PBMs that President Trump is taking on via executive order, they like to double dip and hide these great life-saving medications from you just to make a bottom line. But this online pharmacy of professionals and pharmacists, they simply want you to have life-saving medications. So if you order now at 5 minutes to 11 on the East Coast, you will receive this within 24 hours. And at the long end, because of the mailing system, 2 to 3 days. It's a pretty quick turnaround. So anywhere between 24 to 72 hours, you will have the life-saving medication at your door, prescription-based, but without the hoopla. No red tape, no insurance, nothing to worry about there. Just good life-saving medications. Scan the QR code now. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Once you take care of your health, why don't you visit angelpaste.com. Take care of your skin with the Miracle Cream Original, vitamin B infused, non-GMO, no chemicals. They also have a natural health implemented in their immunity option. It's their orange option, vitamin C infused, again, non-GMO, no chemicals. They're based in Spring, Texas, off the Gulf of America in the Houston Metroplex. Of course, the Lone Star State, a beautiful, wonderful place to live. And they are Christian owned. They hire veterans. So experience the miracle today at angelpaste.com, a product I use, their original Miracle Cream. Many others to look at, though, at angelpaste.com. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history as we enjoy an art discussion and President Trump's announcements on what he is doing as chairman of the Kennedy Center. So we look forward to what he has to unveil there, as the Panicans were wrong again on this economy. And via Truth Social, President Trump talking just about that. As wages grow in this great country, inflation remains low and stable, with it tracking at 1.9%, in fact, as real wages up over 1.3%, gas prices down nearly 10% over the course of the last year, and egg prices down 20% since January when President Trump took office. And he is someone who is focused on making America safe again. We saw that with the great press conference on Monday, and all of that happening while being nominated for Nobel Peace Prize by countless governments and leaders around the world, including some congressmen here at home, including Claudia Tenney in the Empire State of New York. But that doesn't stop people like Shifty Adam Schiff, the pencil neck himself, from criticizing President Trump and trying to deter people from the mortgage fraud investigation that's happening in his office, because he claimed residency not only in the Golden State of California, but in Maryland. That's illegal. And that's what Tish James in New York was investigating President Trump through the Attorney General office in the Empire State. Well, she might be guilty of that as well. It's amazing. Karma is, well, you know what karma is. I won't repeat that here. But as President Trump put out on Truth Social, just out irrefutable proof that Adam Shifty Schiff approved a plan to leak classified information to damage Donald Trump. And this goes all the way back to the Russia hoax and the great work of then Congressman Devin Nunes to expose what was happening in the Russia investigation. That something did not match. And you should read, if you have not, Lee Smith's The Plot Against a President. It's almost sickening to see what happened to usurp the authority of a duly elected constitutional president by none other than communist John Brennan under the direction it now looks like from former President Barack Hussein Obama. This is treason at the highest levels and carried out by crooked Hillary Clinton, the Autopen, and Mr. 8647 Seashell man, James Comey, the failed FBI director. But to focus all this back into an even larger threat other than those who would try to destroy democracy. They claim to defend democracy, these Democrats. Well, it seems as if they want to be a permanent minority party in this country by, again, trying to rule over you because they don't believe in the one vote per citizen. They believe in a big bureaucratic establishment and League of Shadows, deep state globalism of neoliberal and neocon philosophies that are quite frankly dying right before our eyes. And we know this because of how President Trump is addressing the trade deficit, specifically with the Chinese Communist Party, the fellow comrades of Barack Hussein Obama. For too long now, unfair trade practices and America's massive trade deficit with China have fueled the offshoring of American jobs and the decline of our manufacturing sector. President Trump is ensuring economic cooperation between two of the largest economies in order to protect American interests, stop unfair trade practices, and strengthen America's domestic manufacturing base. And the U.S. good trade deficit with China was $295.4 billion in 2024, the largest of any trading partner, and this is specifically under the Autopen. On an annual basis, this deficit is already decreasing substantially, and the United States and China are working to address these imbalances to deliver real lasting benefits to the American worker, farmer, and businesses. And for those who say that this can't happen, just look to what happened at Trump Turnberry with the European Union president, who sat there with President Trump and stated there's been a historical trade deficit. So it brought $600 billion into the United States with a new arranged agreement, and in turn, an additional $720 billion in energy exports that will be led by the United States. So Germany no longer has to rely on their Russian counterpart for energy. And did that seem backwards to begin with? The fact that the Keystone XL pipeline canceled by the Autopen, and the communist Justin Trudeau, the former governor of the great state of Canada, was begging President Biden, please, please, please don't do this because you'll kill Canadian jobs as well as Alaskan jobs and lower 48 jobs in America, lower 48, the continental United States that Alaska aptly names. But then Autopen decided to fund Nord Stream 2, the pipeline that went from Russia into Germany. And then Germany was complaining about the Eastern European border being encroached upon by Russia, but then they were beholden to the Russian government. How does that work exactly? So President Trump is not only providing domestic tranquility in securing our borders, both north and south, with the fentanyl trade stopping that was coming over the Canadian border as well, but making common sense happening on a diplomatic scale that's truly international in its size. So for those that of the panicans and the naysayers that say this can't work out with China, just look at what happened with the European Union just a couple of weeks ago over in Scotland, and with further meetings with United Kingdom and the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Now, continuing productive discussions, the United States and China are committed to ongoing negotiations to resolve trade disputes and strengthen economic ties. Trade discussions with China have been constructive following the administration's announcement of many successful trade deals. Each round of negotiations with the Chinese has built on each other, further strengthening economic cooperation and the implementation to work toward fair and balanced trade with a key trading partner. President Trump has aptly stated, "We're getting along with China very well." So we look forward to that forthcoming, as President Trump is very excited for this announcement here at the Kennedy Center. We await him very soon, scheduled right here at the top of the hour, with some portraits to unveil. And this Kennedy Center visit, where President Trump stated on Truth Social that great nominees for the Kennedy Center Awards, they will be announced Wednesday. That is right now, today. Tremendous work is being done and money being spent on bringing it back to the absolute top level of luxury, glamour, and entertainment. It had fallen on hard times physically, but will soon come back with a major comeback, signed President Donald John Trump. And this is all on the heels of making D.C. safe again with his pledge of home rule. And you have major outlets making great comments with their analysis. Promise made to all Americans to keep them safe, regardless of their zip code, especially in the big cities. Now, the Daily Caller is saying that we stand with the president and the D.C. Police Union, backing Trump's capital city crime crackdown. Also, editorials coming from the Washington Reporter that President Trump is right to liberate the federal city. The New York Post mentioning that mother of slain congressional intern praises Trump's crackdown on crime, and things will now change in the federal city. And why Trump is right on D.C. crime. The Washington Examiner going on a deep dive regarding just that. So this president committed to not only making America safe again, but also making it beautiful throughout our countless institutions. And as chairman, honorable chairman of the Kennedy Center, that's clear that he wants to do that for the arts. He enjoyed that immensely as our friend and colleague over at another excellent programming new media outlet asked that very question on that very red carpet you see before your eyes. What's the first musical you can remember attending on the Great White Way of Broadway, being New York residents? President Trump and Melania Trump, the First Lady from years ago, as their Florida residents now, speaking on the greatness of Les Mis and also the great works of Andrew Lloyd Webber like Phantom of the Opera. So we'll see what President Trump has to say today regarding these amazing institutional gems that will make America beautiful again. We look forward to all of that as we thank our sponsors here at the right side of history at 11:07 Eastern. It is covepure.com/RSBN. Get $200 off. And let me tell you about this clear water technology that Cove Pure demonstrates. Not only is it great to sit on your countertop, whether it be in your den, your kitchen, somewhere that's easy access to get the life-saving, life-giving water that every American deserves by protecting what matters. But this clear water technology takes out 99.9% of the impurities in your water, including fluoride. Now, we know our toothpaste is riddled with all of that, and it's good to go to those all-natural options that Standard Oil stayed away from with the Rockefeller takeover of that poison that's now put into our dental care. But every American should have the right to choose whether or not fluoride is in their water and whether or not to consume that. So this justifies Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy's stance over the years and the legal lawsuits and challenges he brought before companies that claim that this never happened in the first place. He's justified in everything he has worked towards, and his name is aptly on the building that President Trump will be speaking from today that honors his late great uncle, the 35th president of the United States. But in the meantime, it's important to read on JAMA Pediatrics. They did a study with their scientists and doctors that found that children drinking out of the tap on a regular basis, it could actually bring down 2 points in their IQ level. Why would you want anything like that in the continued poisoning of American youth? Cove Pure is doing something about it. CovePure.com/RSBN. You need reverse osmosis. It is very, very good and important for you to make America healthy again. CovePure.com/RSBN. Truly your go-to for all water health here at the network. Also, another great new sponsor here on the right side of history, PureHealthResearch.com. They have over 45 plus supplements to help you with your gut health. But if you scan the QR code now and have a great savings of 35% with code RSBN, I want to talk about two amazing energy level boosting supplements that you will love. First, it's the Liver Health Formula. The fat deposits in the liver can pile on pounds and make you feel all dreary and drowsy, sleepy, and just make you simply feel tired. Liver Health Formula helps reduce fat deposits with nutrients like artichoke extract and milk thistle. In a customer survey, almost 60% of those using this great health supplement mentioned that it was better to manage their weight with it, and that 87% reported more energy. Next is the lymph system support. Natural ingredients in the lymph system support system help gently flush extra fluids and toxins out of your body, which can help reduce swelling in large ways, especially in your extremities. So you have hands and feet that just feel tingly and hurt a bit. It could be something to do with the lymph system and flushing out those toxins. So now, along with those two great health supplements, again, 45 plus, we're at that website there for you to research, purehealthresearch.com. Save 35% with code RSBN for the next 48 hours. So I would rush on over there. Do not delay. Contact them today. Scan the QR code there. Again, code RSBN. Pretty easy to remember. purehealthresearch.com. Thank you for your sponsorship, the newest sponsor here on the right side of history with our live desk, as it's 11:11 on the East Coast, 8:11 on the West Coast. It is truly a golden era to be alive as America 250 keeps chugging along, and economic protectionism, nationalism, all good things, right-wing populism, truly saving the day. And as I stand here, I am a proud right-wing populist. I never thought I would be such a right-wing populist, but President Trump came down that golden escalator and made some rather good arguments regarding it, and I started to listen and pay attention. And although I've always been a member or involved in Republican politics since a teenager, it completely reformed my positions on a number of different things, and I'm glad that that happened. And I'm sure a lot of Americans, including our good viewers, had that happen for them as well, because the biggest thing we noticed over the last decade, since President Trump came down that golden escalator with our beautiful and wonderful First Lady, Joe Seals had that vision here at the network to cover these amazing rallies that were taking place. The legacy media said would not happen. That you can see now on those YouTube videos that these people like George Clooney, like the former President Barack Hussein Obama on Jimmy Kimmel's soon-to-be canceled ABC show, mic dropping, saying, "At least I'll be a president," criticizing President Trump's tweets at the time. No, President Trump was right. He would come to the Oval Office and make major reforms for the United States of America. And we've seen how that's worked out for the middle class here, and with billions and billions of wealth coming into the United States thanks to the tariffs. I'm sure that will come into discussions in the upcoming days, weeks, and months regarding not only ending the terrible war between Russia and Ukraine, but also the debate with China and really streamlining that trade deficit, as we are now on the course of doing that with the European Union, who admitted that they were taking advantage of the United States. And we'll see how far President Xi Jinping, the premier of the Chinese Communist Party, will go in that sort of language. Perhaps he won't. Someone who, as President Trump has aptly named, a great deal maker, and also someone who's tough and someone he actually respects in the process, although they have very different opinions on the matter of capitalism versus communism. And President Trump, through the use of tariffs and renegotiating all these trade deals, especially in the Indo-Pacific, with Cambodia to Thailand to the Philippines to Vietnam, really putting the Chinese Communist Party on the back ropes. And our thoughts and prayers continue to be with Taiwan, who has to stem off this imperialist nation that wants global domination. And truly, the real Chinese movement for freedom remains on that island of roughly 2 million or so people. So our thoughts and prayers with them, and let's be the Americans that they seek to know, love, and understand. They fly American flags in their freedom and protest against an imperialist nation that, if you saw the other day, 2 of their warships colliding in that process, and may they sink deep into the ocean, because, again, they have a 200-plus year plan to dominate the entire world. We saw what they did with the pandemic and the gain of function research that was sadly supported by people like Dr. Birx and Dr. Fear, Anthony Fauci. Where is he, by the way? All of that gain of function research, or the torturing of beagles. Justice is coming, ideally, peacefully and patriotically, and everyone is innocent until proven guilty, something not provided to those in various forms over the course of the last several years, and especially over the course of the Otto Penn administration, especially with those J6 prisoners who did not receive their Sixth Amendment due process rights of a speedy and timely trial. Many of them were in solitary confinement, but free now, thank you to President Trump's executive orders and commutations. That was the right thing to do. We're going to take a quick commercial break at 11:15 as we await the President of the United States to give remarks at the Kennedy Center. Don't change that channel. Stick with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First news. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network, our live desk that brings you into the fold of your federal city, your government, as we are live here in the loveliest village of the Plains, Auburn, Alabama, covering everything inside the Beltway today, specifically at the Kennedy Center, where your 45th and 47th President of the United States will be speaking momentarily. It's been very clear, the message to illegal aliens and criminals, that there is no more messing around. We saw this week that Washington, D.C. will be made safe again We've also seen that throughout the administration, whether it be Border Czar Tom Homan to Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Attorney General Pam Bondi to FBI Director Kash Patel, working overtime at the direction of this president to remove foreign terrorist organizations such as MS-13, the border cartels, and Trende Aragua, among others. And now in turn, it's up to you to elect DAs and attorneys general who will actually enforce the law across this great land. In the meantime, President Trump shares on Truth Social just how our brave law enforcement goes about it.
Viewer discretion is advised.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
This special edition of Immigration and Customs Enforcement is filmed on location with the men and women of law enforcement. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
The signing of the One Big Beautiful Bill on the 4th of July, in fact, funds ICE, ATF, and federal agents in ways never imagined. That's good for the security of the homeland. Join.ice.gov, your way of doing that. With 10,000 open positions, there are roughly 80,000 plus applications right now, including the newest ICE agent, Dean Cain. You might remember that name. He did some of this hosting, anchoring, and reporting number of years ago, but he was also an actor and Superman on television. So he is putting that suit back on in a real-life superhero way and protecting the American people via a very difficult job, a job that is, I'm sure, full of stress. And we've seen with Sacramento raids, in fact, and I would highly advise you not to do this, and I believe our viewers are very smart in that regard and would not be involved in this, but there's an individual that was arrested, actually a resident of this great nation, but he decided to slash the tires of ICE during a Sacramento raid. Really bad idea. Then took a swing at one of the police officers, and he was arrested as a result. And then was a significant other came by and said, he's a legal citizen, he's a legal citizen. Well, they said, well, yeah, but he just slashed our tires and took a punch at one of our officers, so he's now arrested. Highly recommend you don't do that. And it is proper that they do wear masks to protect themselves because of what they're dealing with. And isn't that interesting with all of the mandates? You know, the back pay for our military and for those who have lost their jobs as a result of not taking something and being mandated at a state, local, or even federal level in some cases, they should be protected and wear the mask because diseases were going up as a result of an open border. So not just the fentanyl crisis, not just the illegal alien crime that has harmed countless families and made each state and each city and each zip code truly a border region, not just McAllen, Texas, but Chicago, Illinois, down to Orlando, Florida, all the way up to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We know this to be true, but measles and other diseases on the rise. Wasn't it ironic that the illegal aliens coming in through the southern border did not have to be vaccinated for various diseases, not just the viral infection that came from China 5 years ago? How is that common sense? So it's either, you have to look at it through the lens of two ways. Either it's inept incompetence on the part of Otto Penn and his comrades, or it was intentional. And it's starting to look as such with all these investigations and the work that James Comer is doing as the Kentucky representative and chairman of the House Oversight Committee, that starting to look like it was intentional or planned. Because again, many of these issues, especially the border itself, if Mr. Ice Cream Cone Otto Penn just sat at Rehoboth Beach and did not do anything regarding the first Trump administration's policies to protecting the border, just left it as be, and continued building the border wall, he would have had a safe, strong, and secure border. And then Alejandro Mayorkas is under sworn testimony saying that the border was secure and gave misleading information to Congress. Last time I checked, that's contempt of Congress. I'm not a lawyer, But I've watched enough of these things, I've covered enough of these hearings, that you can't lie to Congress. It's a federal crime. So we'll see where these continued investigations go, as there it is, the seal of the President of the United States. And a mic check or two. So that means the President is right around the corner. He is in the House. And to give some great updates on not only the infrastructure and the projects planned for the Kennedy Center, which will be, I'm sure, much quicker, more swift, on time and under budget compared to the Federal Reserve that he visited recently with Mr. Too Late Jerome Powell himself, who created so much construction incompetence and bloated budgets, and that's what these bureaucrat deep state loyalists do. The neocons and neoliberals, they like these projects to go on forever as long as they're getting a paycheck, but it's created congestion and just labor pains within the district, let alone all of the crime, as President Trump mentioned on Monday. But the beautification of this great institution, the arts that John Fitzgerald Kennedy, our 35th president, cared so dearly about. Camelot, as his time in the office was aptly named, with the very popular musical at that time, and has been taken from stage to screen on a couple of different occasions. And is truly now a golden era, in a sense, another Camelot for this great nation. And with a wonderful first couple, such as Donald and Melania Trump at the forefront of this, serving as the honorary chairman of this organization, we will see the unveiling of those portraits next to the American flags of who will be nominated this year for the Kennedy Center Award, something we look very forward to, seeing who those great nominees are. As President Trump mentioned on Truth Social, great nominees at the Trump Kennedy Center, the Kennedy Center, as he put it on Truth Social. They will be announced Wednesday. Tremendous work being done and money being spent on bringing it back to the absolute top level of luxury, glamour, and entertainment. It had fallen on hard times physically, but will soon be making a major comeback, and that signed President Donald John Trump, President DJT. So that was him via Truth Social discussing this just yesterday. So this is a big event that I'm sure he is looking forward to. This is somewhat of a pet project. And remember, this is a president working overtime for you, the American people. Again, donating his last quarterly check to making America strong and safe again, and wealthy again, healthy across the board, with really an extraordinary cabinet. I think the best cabinet in modern American history. As we thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live Desk, it is allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Get ivermectin and mebendazole now 25% off. What a great deal. On top of the extra 10% off of the rest of what's available here, with over 200 essential medications. Think about that. Antibiotics, also emergency medical kits, because there is a new COVID strain out there. There are bacterial and viral infections that can sometimes hit in the summertime and blindside you with literally a left hook to the face. And you just don't want that with flooding and the crazy weather that can happen. We saw what happened in Milwaukee last week, shutting down the Wisconsin State Fair prematurely with all of the floodwaters. We know what's happened in Texas and the Lone Star State with the flooding of the Guadalupe River and the destruction of Camp Mystic. So how does that affect you? Well, if it shuts down a pharmacy, where are you going to go if your medicine cabinet is not stocked up? Where are you going to go when the PBMs are double dipping into not only the insurance mandates, but also pharmacies down the street from you? That's why this online pharmacy of doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers, pharmacists, care about you and great patriots, making them healthy again. And there's no red tape, so no bureaucracy. If you don't have insurance, it's not an issue. You just need a prescription for these drugs. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Scan that QR code now, RSBN10. It's a great go-to, and we are grateful for the sponsorship of Michael Kunzler, the co-owner of this extraordinary online pharmacy that really jumped ahead of those executive orders that President Trump working so hard to do to bring down those prescription costs with his team of medical experts, from Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz, doing a wonderful job, as well as Marty McCary, who are reforming all of these pharmaceutical institutions and these health organizations in America. And our thoughts and prayers as well. I was on the phone with a dear friend of the network, Dr. Barry Zitzholtz, who's now working at the CDC. Hopefully have an interview with him in the coming days, weeks, and months even. But at the CDC right now, the shooting that happened last week, everyone is apparently working from home. Our thoughts and prayers with those great patriots who keep Atlanta and the entire country safe. And Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. going to the Peach State to look at all the damage that did take place there by apparently a lunatic who chose to attempt to harm people and then take his own life in the process. But we await President Trump to speak at the Kennedy Center just moments from now, for the institution aptly named after the Secretary of HHS, his uncle, the 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, who loved the arts himself and was a big fan of Broadway, of opera, of some of the finer things in life, and was raised with that privilege, but in turn used that great platform to serve the American people as a Democrat, as a true Democrat who believed in liberalism, free speech, access to election integrity, civil rights, something you won't find now in today's modern Democrat Party. Someone who is, I think, very similar to the policies that President Trump has used, peace through strength. If you look at President Kennedy's speeches and President Reagan, now to President Trump, all three men working hard towards that peace through strength, to having a strong and robust military, one of meritocracy, one that made America healthy again. If you remember the 1962 ad from President Kennedy on the South Lawn in front of the Truman balcony at the White House, stating how afraid he was of America's youth, leading them to either diabetes or obesity by not being moving and being healthy. And now how that's skyrocketed with 1 in 5 American youth not able to do simple basic tests, whether it be in gym or it being even prepared for those tests to be in the military. Well, that's all changing now. And it's good to have a Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth, who knows how to do PT and can participate that with his fellow modern warriors. Now, we saw some of the cabinet walking in there. I'm sure we saw by the press pool cam there, it looked like Attorney General Pam Bondi, among others in the cabinet, who may be joining President Trump at the Kennedy Center momentarily, as well as other staff. I even caught Rick Lawferley, who walked out there. He's the former chairman of the Young Republican National Federation, but I have to catch up with him because I'm not sure exactly what job he has right now in Washington, D.C., but there's a lot of appointments that have taken place over the course of 200 plus days, assignments that these are good people, a lot of the young people who are truly making America great again, including our 41-year-old Vice President, J.D. Vance. Now he's aged out of Young Republicans, but will always be a Young Republican at heart, as he is the third youngest vice president in American history, and the youngest since Richard Milhouse Nixon, who was the vice president to Dwight D. Eisenhower, going back to the 1950s and 60s, and then he ended up being the 37th president of the United States. We'll see what happens for the career of the vice president, and exciting times as he seems to be the apparent heir of MAGA, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves as we're enjoying now this 2025, and I almost want to put the brakes on all of it because it is going so fast and there is so much positive, with really a headwind that is clear and smooth sailing to work on. And there's Rick Grinnell, of course, a great special advisor to the President of the United States, has been an ambassador to Germany. He has worked overtime to make America safe again and continues to do so on this board of the Kennedy Center, someone who also cares deeply for the arts and someone who is working hard to reform his home state, the Golden State of California. as we await momentarily from now President Trump to speak at this beautiful Kennedy Center with the updates, the nominations for this year's award recipients, but also the process for the beautification of this great facility. As President Trump became honorary chair of the Kennedy Center, he mentioned that he took a tour of the building and was really aghast at what he saw, truly appalled by it and how it needed specific reforms to make this city beautiful once again. And what a way to honor a man who really paved the path for the modern MAGA movement. I would argue President Kennedy had a lot to do with that, and now his nephew carrying on that legacy and that name in perhaps the most courageous way compared to the rest of the Kennedy clan. There's the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Will take it there now live to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much. This is a very exciting project. We're going to do something that will go rapidly, relatively inexpensively, and we'll make it better than it ever was, frankly. It'll be something that people are going to be very proud of. Along with, in the bigger picture, a place called Washington, D.C. That is the bigger one, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But let's talk about right now the Kennedy Center, and I'm delighted to be here as we officially announce the incredibly talented artists who will be celebrated later this year at the 2025 Kennedy Center Honors. It's going to be a big evening. I've been asked to host. I said, I'm the President of the United States. Are you fools asking me to do that? Sir, you'll get much higher ratings. I said, I don't care. I'm President of the United States. I won't do it. They said, please. And then Susie Wells said to me, sir, I'd like you to host. I said, okay, Susie, I'll do it. That's the power she's got. But I just, so I have agreed to host. Do you believe what I have to do? And I didn't want to do it, okay? They're going to say, he insisted. I did not insist. But I think it will be quite successful, actually. It's been a long time. I used to host the Apprentice finales, and we did rather well with that. So I think we're going to do very well because we have some great honorees, some really great ones. Since 1978, the Kennedy Center Honors have been among the most prestigious awards in the performing arts. I wanted one. I was never able to get one. This year, it's true, actually. I would have taken it if they would have called me. I waited and waited and waited, and I said, the hell with it. I'll become chairman, and I'll give myself an honor. Maybe I'm going to honor, next year we'll honor Trump, okay? This year, the board has selected a truly exceptional class of honorees. I mean, really exceptional. First is country music star, actor, and producer George Strait. Great. Over an extraordinary 4-decade career, George has sold more than 120 million records worldwide, amassed 60 #1 hits, wow, and produced 33 platinum certified albums, more than any other living American. That is amazing. He's believed by millions of people to just be as good as you can get, and he's beloved by hundreds of millions of people all over the world. He's really something, and they call him the king of country, and we know him very well, George Strait. Okay. Please. Oh, it looks nice. You're a good-looking guy. I hope he still looks like that. Second is actor, singer, philanthropist, and star of the Broadway stage. One of my favorite talents. I think he's one of the greatest talents I've ever actually seen. I've always said, and just so we don't get in trouble, I'll say among the greatest artists in the world are the Broadway London actors back and forth. That's all they want to do is they want to do Broadway and they want to do London. They want to do 8 shows a week, including matinee on Wednesday. And if you said make a movie, they can't even think about it. If you say go on television, they don't want to. All they want to do is be on the stage, the live stage, and it's amazing. But I've always said that the most talented people, and this man may be the most of all. Michael Crawford is being honored. Michael was born in England in 1942. He made his Broadway debut in 1967. I was there. I shouldn't say that, but I was there. Seems like a long time ago. And he became an international sensation in the 1980s for his original portrayal of the Phantom of the Opera, one of the greatest ever, 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 ever. You don't see him like that very often. Winning him the esteemed Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical. He's won so many awards. Michael is truly a generational talent, had a voice that was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. There's never, I don't know, it's Luciano Pavarotti had a very different voice. The power was incredible, magnificent. Michael had a different kind of a voice. These are just unbelievable talents. But Michael is very special and one of the greatest roles in the history of Broadway. And nobody did it like him. Michael Crawford, thank you very much. Great guy. Next, we look forward to honoring three-time Oscar nominee, Golden Globe Award winner, an action movie icon, and a friend of mine. He's a very unique man. He's somebody that doesn't do these things. I said, I wonder if he'll accept, because some people don't really want to be honored. They don't care. But he was very honored to be honored, I will tell you. He's a very special guy. A real talent, never been given the credit for the talent. There was nobody else could have done the roles that he did like he did. I'm not even close, and they've tried, and they didn't work out too well. His name is Sylvester Stallone. So it's very few, almost, if any, people that could have taken a name and made it so incredible, like Rocky, Rambo, Creed, and others. But think of it, Rocky, Rambo, if you did one, you're good. You do two. And I'll never forget, I was a young guy, and I went to see a thing called Rambo, and it had just come out. I didn't know anything about it. But I was in a movie theater, like we used to go to movie theaters a lot. And I said, this movie is phenomenal. What the heck? And that turned out to be a monster. Rocky is Rocky. I mean, the way that happened, you know, Sly had no money, nothing, and he went around, and everybody wants to do a boxing movie. It's the most, you know, probably more than any other type of character, boxing, always boxing. It's so great. And there's rarely been anything like this one. John Voight did a great one, as you know. Champ, great. I think that was right there, too. John Voight's a phenomenal person, phenomenal actor. But Sly came in and he had no money. He wrote a script along with thousands of other people writing scripts on a boxer. And for some reason, a studio picked up this and liked it. And Sly he's in an old car that he came in from Brooklyn or someplace in New York, but I think Brooklyn. It barely made it to California. He was sleeping in the car. I mean, he had nothing. And he wanted control over who the actor was going to be, because he said it can't be successful if you're going to pick a movie actor with a bad build, okay? A nice face, but a bad body. And he said, I can't have these guys, because he's a tough cookie, and he knew exactly what it took. He knew what a boxer's body was. So they brought him one, and I won't tell you who it was, but it was a big name. But the chest wasn't exactly what you need. One shot, and your heart would pop out. That wasn't too good. Then he did another one. He was fat, sloppy, but had a good face. Then he did another one, and another one, and another one. And he turned it down. He wouldn't take $1 million. He wouldn't do it. And it turned out that when they saw him, they said, you know, you'd be actually pretty good for this role. And he had never done this before, anything like it. But think of it, he turned down $1 million. He had nothing. He refused to let somebody else play. He didn't want to play it. He wasn't originally, he did it as a writer. But he ended up playing it because he couldn't find anybody else that fit the role. And who knew what would have happened? He's become a legend of the silver screen, a true legend, and he's a great guy. He's a little bit tough, a little bit different, I will tell you. He's a little tough guy. But he's a phenomenal person with a phenomenal wife and family. Incredible wife, incredible family. His film's grossing more than $7.5 billion, which is either a record or very close to it. I can't imagine anybody doing more. If you add up Rambo and Rocky and these others, I can't imagine anybody doing much more. 7.5 billion worldwide over the course of 6 decades. And Sly is a pillar of the really American pop culture and a Hollywood superstar like few others, and one of the biggest names on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In fact, the only one that's a bigger name on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, they say, is a guy named Donald Trump. I'm on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, too, if you can believe that one. But he's amazing. He's really amazing. And he's actually a great actor. Fourth will be together celebrating one of the most revered singers of the American disco era, Gloria Gaynor. Best known for her chart-topping 1978 hit, I Will Survive, Gloria won the 1980 Grammy for Best Disco Recording, and her song was inducted into the National Recording Registry in 2016. 4 decades later, Gloria won a second Grammy in 2020 for her gospel album, Testimony, which is incredible. Truly a historic achievement. Not only in terms of the years that have gone by to be great that long, but to have the two top of anything in that span of time, and with that kind of period between, is pretty amazing. But I will say that I Will Survive is an unbelievable song. I've heard it, you know, like everyone else here, thousands of times. And it's one of those few that get better every time you hear it. And nobody can sing it like her. And that's an honor. So, Gloria Gaynor, thank you. Thank you very much. And finally, we'll be honoring one of the greatest rock bands of all time, Kiss. So Kiss was formed in 1973 in New York City by founding band members, and incredible people, by the way, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss. Kiss became a global phenomenon, sold more than 100 million records worldwide, and produced 30 gold albums and lots of other things they produced. They made a fortune. And they're great people, and they deserve it, and they work hard, and they're still working hard, and it's an honor to present Kiss. Thank you very much. Got it? Yeah. Thank you. And they're going to do something very special. Kiss is going to be here on a little bit before the show. I think they're going to do something very special. We're going to have a good time. The 48th Kennedy Center honorees are outstanding people, a standing group, incredible. We can't wait to celebrate the Kennedy Center honors. It'll be in December. It'll be on CBS. In a few short months since I became chairman of the board at the Kennedy Center, we have completely reversed the decline of this cherished national institution. It was being run down. Money wasn't being spent properly. They were building things they shouldn't have built that nobody wanted, instead of taking care of the great gem that it is. You look at the marble, look at the quality of the marble, and the things that, with a little fix-up and a little work, we can make it unbelievable. These columns, when you see them the next time, they'll be magnificent. I mean, we have some great plans for this. The bones are so good. The bones of a building. If you don't have the bones, you might as well forget it. I'm working on another building, a thing called the White House. We're fixing it up so beautifully. It needed it. It's been many, many years since it's been properly taken care of. It's incredible. One of the great places of the world. Maybe, I mean, truly, to me, is there anything else even close? But we're doing that and doing some other things, and we're going to also fix up a place called Washington, D.C. We're going to make it so beautiful again. We're going to be redoing the parks, redoing the grass. You know, grass has a lifetime like people have a lifetime. And the lifetime of this grass has long been gone when you look at the parks where the grass is old, tired, exhausted. We're going to redo the grass with the finest grasses. I know a lot about grass because I own a lot of golf courses, and if you don't have good grass, you're not in business very long, Lindsey Graham. By the way, you have very good poll numbers, Lindsey. I just saw. Congratulations. But a few short months ago, I became chairman of the Kennedy Center, and we completely reversed it. We reversed what was happening. We ended the woke political programming, and we're restoring the Kennedy Center as the premier venue for performing arts anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. This has the potential to be anywhere in the world. We're going to make it something that people can't even believe. We have some unbelievable plans, and ultimately it's about the talent you get, though. You know, you can have a beautiful building, you can have nice marble walls, you can have nicely done columns, as I was saying, but if you don't have the talent on the stage, and we're going to get the best talent in the world. To that end, the world-renowned musical Les Mis had a phenomenal 5-week sold-out run this summer, beat projected revenues by 35%, and we've raised over $10 million in private funds from a lot of generous donors, and we closed the $26 million budget shortfall that they had for before we got here. And with the help of Congress, we secured the critical funding necessary to rebuild the building, and we're going to get all brand new, highest level seats, magnificent seats, and it's going to be all new. We could have taken the existing ones and do a little paint job, a little fabric, but it's not the same thing. So we'll be taking out next season. All of the seats will be taken out. The room is being completely rebuilt, and I just want to thank the Republicans in the Senate, headed by Lindsey. In that case, Lindsey was she's a big fan of this building, and they got a record $257 million that's going to go toward renovations that the building really needs, and all of the exterior is going to be incredible. It's going to be exciting. So I thank you very much, and thank all of your Republican senators. I don't think we had too many Democrat votes, probably. You never have. We don't have Democrats voting even for crime. But I shouldn't make this political, because they made the Academy Awards political and they went down the tubes. So they'll say, Trump made it political. But I think if we make it our kind of political, we'll go up, okay? Let's see if I'm right about that. But I want to thank the executive director for an incredible job. He's done great. He's been with me for just about the beginning, and everything he's touched has been good. He was on high intelligence. He worked in low intelligence and high intelligence. He did better with the high intelligent people, but he's been fantastic. He's the executive director, Rick Grinnell, for his work. Thank you very much, Rick. Unbelievable job. And as well as Lindsey and all the people that helped us in Congress, I want to thank, and the Senate has been incredible. By the way, Leader Thune has been unbelievable, and Speaker Mike Johnson. These are great people. What we're doing with the great big beautiful bill is you're going to see a whole different country. You're seeing it already. We're coming in where the trillions of dollars is coming in from tariffs from all over the world, from countries that took advantage of our country. They thought we were children. They took advantage of us for decades, and now the money is flowing to us, and we've become the hottest country anywhere in the world. But the Kennedy Center board members, many of whom I knew, and many of whom I put on the board, and it's as good a board as I've ever seen. And on the board also, and some people that are doing an incredible job. One in particular is Attorney General Pam Bondi. The job she's doing is incredible. Thank you very much. Long beyond the Kennedy Center. The Kennedy Center is the easy part. She's incredible, and you're going to see a big change in Washington crime stats very soon. Not the stats that they gave, because they turned out to be a total fraud. The real stats, the stats went through the roof. You know, they had a man that was forced to put up stats like they were doing better. They're not doing better. Crime is the worst it's ever been, but it started as of about yesterday. You see a big change, and people are feeling safe already. I've had so many calls. Thank you, sir. Thank you. They were afraid to walk out. They're not afraid anymore. And this will be like the border. We started off with millions and millions of people coming in from all over the world, gang members and people from jails. They were unloading their jails into our country. All over the world they were coming, drug dealers. They came from Africa. They came from Asia. They came from South America, Venezuela in particular. They were coming in, Trinidad, and the toughest people you've ever seen. And by the millions. And for the last 3 months, we had 0, 0, and 0. We had 0 people come in for 3 months. They respect our country again. That's the other thing. All over the world, our country is respected again. So I also want to thank the Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, who's fantastic. She's done an incredible job. And Sergio Gore for the job he's done with personnel. Thank you very much, Sergio. Fantastic. In the coming months, we'll fully renovate the dated and the infrastructure of the building and make the Kennedy Center a crown jewel of American arts and culture once again. I think we'll bring it to a higher level than it ever hit. Actually, it hit a certain level, but we're going to bring it to a higher level than it ever hit. We have the right location, and soon we will be a crime-free area. This is going to be a crime-free area, by the way. You'll be able to go out. People tell me they can't run anymore. They're just afraid. And they'll be running again. We're going to have a crime-free. It's a big statement, because if one thing happens all year, Pam, you better be good, because they'll say Trump did not fulfill his. One person gets a little injured by somebody, they'll say Trump did not fulfill his promise. No, we're going to be essentially crime-free. This is going to be a beacon, and it's going to also serve as an example of what can be done. We have to get rid of this cashless bail nonsense. If you look at New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, which is so badly run. Los Angeles, they can't get the houses. They can't get the people their permits to build their houses. They're trying to rebuild their houses from the ridiculous fire that should have never allowed to have taken place. They should have had the water coming down from the Pacific Northwest, but they didn't do that. But they can't get the permits for the people that want to build their houses. But I want to thank Lee Zeldin, because the federal government has gotten all of their permits, which are much more difficult permits, actually, and had them literally within 30 days after the fire. Everybody had their permit. But you don't have the city and state permits. They got to get going. The governor and the mayor have to get going. It will just be a matter of time that we're going to do something that's going to be incredible. We're going to use the Kennedy Center as a big focus of it, and that's the 250th anniversary celebration that we're having. So it's 250 years. So we have the Olympics, we have the World Cup, and we have the 250th anniversary celebration, all in this administration, and it's an honor that we were able to not be allowed to do what we were illegally and what we were supposed to do, and that was we had a great election in 2020. We won the election by a lot, but it was a rigged election, and we had to wait 4 years, and we waited 4 years, and it's interesting because I got the Olympics and I got the World Cup. I can't claim that I got the 250th. That one's a big one, but I happen to be here. But I got the Olympics, I got the World Cup, and I said the shame of it is that I'm not going to be president when it happens. And lo and behold, look what happens. We have some bad things took place, and now I'm going to be president for the Olympics. I'll be president for the World Cup, and the 250th is going to be maybe more exciting than both. It's a great celebration of our country. We're going to be using this building for a lot of the celebration, having to do with 250 years. But as I said earlier, I'm determined to make Washington, D.C. safe, clean, and beautiful again. It's going to take place very rapidly. Be prepared. And a big part of that's going to include the Kennedy Center. So thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody for helping us. This is mostly the group right here they're young, they're smart, they're ambitious, they want my job. Someday one of them will probably have it. But we have a great group of people that are putting this together, and they're also helping us with Washington, D.C. We're going to make Washington beautiful. We're going to redo roads. We're going to redo the medians, the pavers, and the medians all throughout the city. We're going to take all the graffiti off. We're going to have to remove the tents and the people that are living in our parks. We're going to be redoing the parks, the grasses and all. We're going to be going to Congress for a relatively small amount of money, and Lindsey and the Republicans are going to be approving it. I don't know about the Democrats. They don't approve anything. It's amazing. It's like they just don't want to vote for anything. They've got the yips. You know, in golf they say the yips. The Democrats are afraid to do anything because they don't want to be criticized. But fighting crime is a good thing. We have to explain. We're going to fight crime. That's a good thing. Already they're saying he's a dictator. The place is going to hell, and we've got to stop it. So instead of saying he's a dictator, they should say we're going to join him and make Washington safe. But they say he's a dictator, and then they end up getting mugged, and but the stats are very bad. But we're going to. I think we'll actually get Democrat support. I really believe they can't do this one too. It's they talk about 80-20 issues. But I think many of those 80-20 issues, like men and women's sports, I think it's 97-3, not 80-20. And I think crime is maybe 100-0. So I think we may get very well some Democrat support, but I hope so. But even if we don't, we have the majority, so we're going to vote it in as Republicans, and we're going to do something. And that's going to serve as a beacon for New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and other places all over the country. Our whole country is going to be so different and so great. It's going to be clean and safe and beautiful, and people are going to love our flag more than they've ever loved it, and we're going to do a great job. So I want to congratulate all the nominees. They're unbelievable people, and we're going to have a tremendous day in December, and that evening is going to be special, some really special people and real talent. Do you have any questions? Yes, please.
Hi, sir. There's new reporting that the Russians have hacked into some computer systems that manage U.S. federal court documents. I wonder if you've seen this reporting and if you plan to bring it up with Putin when you see him later in the week.
I guess I could. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? They hack in. That's what they do. They're good at it. We're good at it. We're actually better at it. But no, I have heard about it. I've heard about it. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned congressional Democrats. You have not yet met with Democratic leadership, but there's a funding deadline at the end of September. Do you plan to meet with Leader Schumer and Leader Jeffries to discuss that situation?
Well, I will, I guess, but it's almost a waste of time to meet because they never approve anything. If we want money to fight crime, if we want money to do only good things, just good things. Let's not even talk about controversial. They don't want to meet about anything. They really are. They're stuck. They don't know what to do. They have probably more, I would say more than half are sane, but they are led by insane people. And the kind of things that they're pushing are not something. We have a communist running for the mayor of New York. And I wish him well. I may have to deal with him. I mean, it's not even conceivable. It's not even conceivable that could happen. And maybe he won't win, but he won the primaries by quite a bit. Shockingly, he won the primaries. So, and you see some of the people supporting him that truly don't believe what he's espousing. So, I mean, we will meet, but nothing's going to come out of the meeting. But here's the advantage we have is that we just passed a great, big, beautiful bill that had all the biggest tax cuts in history. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. Think of it. Think of that for the seniors. No tax on overtime. and all sorts of things. You go out, buy a car, you can deduct the interest payment. If you borrow money, you can deduct the interest payment from your taxes. So many things, but the biggest thing is from a business standpoint, deductions. That was tremendous. It's going to, our country is roaring. Our businesses are, you're going to see some numbers in 12 months when these factories are open. We're opening up factories all over the world, all over the country, but that's all spreading to, I think we're spreading the wealth all over the world, if you want to know the truth. But we're opening them in this country at a level that we've never seen before. We've never seen. So they just don't want to prove anything. They just, we meet with them and they say, as Nancy Reagan said, just say no. They go, oh, just say no. They're afraid to approve anything. If we say we want to stop crime in this country, or as an example, bail, we want to make it so that people, if they murder somebody, they're in jail. They don't get out on no bail. They say, we don't want that. We want people to murder somebody and they immediately are released and they go out and murder somebody else. It's a big problem, a tremendous problem. By the way, we're going to go for statutes in D.C. and then ultimately for the rest of the country where that's not going to be allowed. Because it was when they did the cashless bail thing that the numbers really started going up. In this city, in New York, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, no matter where they have it, the numbers went through the roof. So we're going to meet with them, of course. I'd like to meet with them. We're going to tell them all these good things, and they're going to tell us no. And then we're going to go out and we're going to vote it in by the Republicans, because I don't believe that anybody is capable of making a deal with these people. They have gone crazy. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your federalization of the police has a 30-day limit unless Congress acts to extend it. Are you talking to Congress about extending it, or do you believe 30 days is sufficient?
Well, if it's a national emergency, we can do it without Congress, but we expect to be to Congress before Congress very quickly. And again, we think the Democrats will not do anything to stop crime, but we think the Republicans will do it almost unanimously. So we're going to need a crime bill that we're going to be putting in. And it's going to pertain initially to D.C. We're going to use it as a very positive example. And we're going to be asking for extensions on that, long-term extensions, because you can't have 30 days. 30 days that's by the time you do it. We're going to have this in good shape. And don't forget, in the border, everyone said it would take years and you'd have to go back to Congress. I never went to Congress for anything. I just said, close the border. And they closed the border. And that was the end of it. I didn't go back to Congress. We're going to do this very quickly, but we're going to want extensions. I don't want to call national emergency. If I have to, I will. But I think the Republicans in Congress will approve this pretty much unanimously. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you encourage members of the press to do ride-alongs with the D.C. police to understand how serious this crime issue is?
It's okay to me if they want to do it. We're going to work with the D.C. police. A lot of very good people in there. Not all, but a lot of very good, very, very professional. And, we have a big force. I think they said 3,500. They're always asking the mayor, who's a very nice woman, but got to do the job. We've worked with the mayor for 6 months, and she's been here for many years. And the numbers are worse than they ever are. Don't let anyone tell you they're not. And the whole statistical charts that they made, the whole thing is a rigged deal. They got rid of the guy because he didn't want to do the numbers the way they wanted to, and they put their own numbers out. They said it's the best in 20 years. No, it's the worst in 20 years. But we're going to be very open about what we're doing. So if the media wants to ride with police, if they want to do it, if they feel it's safe, that would be okay. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Sorry, with President Zelensky.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mary Margaret with Daily Wire. 2 questions on D.C., if that's okay. How do you feel about Mayor Bowser's level of cooperation and her choosing to advocate for D.C.'s statehood right now? And
well, the statehood, let me do that one first. Statehood is ridiculous. We want to straighten the place out. Statehood's ridiculous. It's unacceptable. It's the Democrats want it because the Democrats have, about 95% in this little area. Even I didn't get it very much. They want that. They want to pick up 2 senators, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And that's the least of the reasons why, by the way, but that's one of the reasons why. What we want to do is make Washington, D.C., the greatest, most beautiful, safest capital anywhere in the world. And that's going to happen. I mentioned the word bones before. The bones here, the bones, we have the greatest bones. When you look at that Supreme Court building, I think it's one of the most beautiful buildings. When you look at some of the buildings here, it's so magnificent, and everything's good, but it's just dirty and not properly maintained. It's not taken care of. Potholes in the roads. All of it's going to happen very quickly. We're going to seek a relatively small amount of money for fix-up, and we're going to put it out to bid. We have great contractors here, great road builders, everything, and we're not ripping roads apart so they're closed for 4 years as they redo the concrete bases, and you don't need that. We need a beautiful topping by a very talented asphalt-type person, somebody that does the job. We go out, you know, when I get contractors, I use great contractors. To me, great contractors are very special, like a great surgeon, like a great teacher, like a great nurse. A great contractor is very important. We'll only use the best. And when you put a coat of asphalt on that 2 inches of asphalt, 3 inches of asphalt, it looks brand new. You take all the garbage off. They reseed it, as we call it, or different names, but they take the bad stuff off and they put the good stuff down. It takes not a long period of time. A matter of a few days, you'll have a beautiful, magnificent road. You fix up the curbs. You get rid of the medians in this town are just horrible. You know, you're riding around, I think to myself, leaders come from foreign countries. You see, with leaders all the time, different leaders. They came in from India recently and from everywhere. They came in from a war that we just ended, Azerbaijan, and you know that, and Armenia. We just ended the war. The two leaders came in. One of them said, "My country looks better. The roads are better than, you know, we were talking about." I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Well, the roads are better in Armenia than they are in Washington, D.C. It's embarrassing." And I was asked at the last press conference, they said to me, "How important is it? You're doing world peace. We're going to on Friday to Alaska, meeting with President Putin, Russia. How important it is that the capital is important?" I said, "Very, very important." I told my father, said to me, "When you see a restaurant and you want to go and you want to have dinner, and then you go up to the front door and it's dirty, turn around and go back because the kitchen's dirty." It's the same thing with the capital of the United States of America. If it's dirty and unsafe, it sets a bad tone for the rest of the world. So we're not going to do that. We're going to have this capital fixed up, safe, clean, and beautiful in a very short period of time. Go ahead, please. In the back? Yeah, please.
Yes, Mr. President, how were your calls this morning with European leaders, and was it your call not to invite President Zelensky to your meeting with Putin?
No, just the opposite. No. We had a very good call. He was on the call. President Zelensky was on the call. I would rate it a 10, you know, very, very friendly. I know the leaders because I was at NATO, as you know. I took it from 2% to 5%, 2% that wasn't paid, 5% that is paid, which is trillions of dollars in defense capability. No, it was always going to be, I was going to meet with President Putin, and then after that I'm going to call the leaders and President Zelensky. I'm going to call President Zelensky, and then I'll call, probably in that order, the leaders. There's a very good chance that we're going to have a second meeting, which will be more productive than the first, because the first is I'm going to find out where we are and what we're doing. Again, this is Biden's war. This isn't my war. He got us into this thing, and it should have never happened. This war would have never happened if I were president. But it is what it is, and I'm here to fix it, and I'm here to stop 6,000, 7,000 people last week. 7,213 people last week were killed, mostly soldiers. But missiles being lobbed into towns don't exactly help either, but mostly soldiers. And Ukrainian and Russian, they're not American soldiers, but you know, if we can save a lot of lives, it would be a great thing. I've stopped 5 wars in the last 6 months. And on top of that, we wiped out the nuclear capability of Iran, obliterated it. It's turned out to be a correct word, by the way, because, you know, some of the press said, well, maybe it wasn't obliteration. It was obliteration. And we're going to meet with, I would say, the second meeting. If the first one goes okay, we'll have a quick second one. I would like to do it almost immediately. And we'll have a quick second meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky and myself if they'd like to have me there. And that would be a meeting where maybe it could be absolutely work. But the first meeting will not work that out. Certain great things can be gained in the first. It's going to be a very important meeting. But it's setting the table for the second meeting. I think the second meeting, if the second meeting takes place. Now, there may be no second meeting because if I feel that it's not appropriate to have it because I didn't get the answers that we have to have, then we're not going to have a second meeting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I didn't ask you. Go ahead, please, address.
I just wanted to ask you, thank you, Mr. President, how involved were you in the selection process of these honorees?
I would say I was about 98% involved. No, they all went through me. They came over, Rick and Sergio and everybody. They said, I turned down plenty. They were too woke. I had a couple of wokesters. No, we have great people. This is very different than it used to be. Very different. These are great people, and they're not. I don't have any idea the Republican. Because I want people that the Kennedy Center has everything. Look at the Academy Awards. It gets lousy ratings now. It's all woke. All they do is talk about how much they hate Trump. But nobody likes that. They don't watch anymore. That used to have 45 million people watching. I remember The Apprentice, first season. The Apprentice had 42 million people. The Academy Awards had 41 million people. We were the second show to the Super Bowl. But since then, the Academy Awards have gone down to, I think they've gone down to numbers that are like a regular show because it went woke. We're not doing it for that reason. We're doing it because we want the great talent. But these are great people. So I was just a very long answer, but I was very involved.
The Biden administration was auctioning off border wall materials, but we're hearing now that the auctioneer is selling those materials back. Are you finishing building the wall?
Well, I built hundreds of miles of wall, and I was getting very close. I actually finished the wall, but then I added another 200 miles because when you do the original wall that I said I was going to build, which I got built, and I got it to the specifications of the Border Patrol and ICE, the exact. They wanted steel, they wanted concrete inside, they wanted rebar inside that, they wanted it to have wires. We have the walls are wired for, all of the internet stuff and security things. And we built it hundreds of miles. We did great. That's one of the reasons even now we're able to have such good numbers at zero, or essentially very little people coming in. But Biden, I ordered for another 200 miles. I was going to do another 200 because it's the way it is. And we're all set to do it. Then we had the bad election result, the horrible, what happened to our country, what they've allowed to happen to our country. And we are taking now that wall back. They sold the wall. Now, this is expensive stuff. Hardened steel, very expensive. 9,000-pound concrete and rebar. Rebar is very expensive, the hardest rebound. No, it's very, very hard to cut. You have different materials. It's very hard to cut because they cut it down if they can. It's very hard to cut. And Biden sold it for pennies on the dollar, 3 cents on the dollar, 4 cents on the dollar. He sold it. And I said, these guys really don't want it. That was when I first realized, when I saw the wall was being put up, because we could have finished the rest of the wall in about 4 weeks, anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. It was all set to go. It was laying down, ready to be put up. The foundations were, and they took over, and they said, we're going to sell the wall. And they sold it, as you know, for pennies on the dollar. Well, Pam Bondi's been working very hard on suing that company, and I think they reached a settlement where we're taking the wall back. But they stole the wall from us. That wall is so expensive to build, and we had it, as you know, hundreds of miles of it, and they came along and they basically sold it for scrap. And what a shame that is. But that was when I first realized that these people actually want to have open borders. And no country has who has it? Poor countries don't have open borders. No, we had open borders where people just walked in. It didn't matter what they looked like, who they were. They could have. We had 11,888 murderers, half of whom killed more than one person. Literally killed more than one person. And this is who we took into our country. So the wall is the least of it, but we're going to take the wall back. We're paying a small amount of money, as I understand it, to get it back, to get rid of the litigation. We'll take it back. We'll put it up. Yeah. Go ahead in the back, please.
I want to take it back to the Kennedy Center, if I can, just for a second, Mr. President.
Sure.
From what I understand, the Les Mis show exceeded everyone's expectations. Attendance, revenue, across the board.
Great.
Do you anticipate future shows to basically do the same?
I like that guy. Now, that's called a question, okay? And he's a great reporter, actually. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, it did great. Les Mis did great, broke records, and was sold out and beautiful. And we anticipate a lot of that happening. There's a thirst for it. And especially when the crime is knocked out. You know, when we knock out crime, some people probably stay away from places like restaurants and other things. It ruins your whole fabric. It ruins your country. And when somebody thinks they have about a 25% chance of getting mugged, they say, let's not go to restaurants tonight. We're going to make it so that they have no chance of getting mugged. And it's going to happen soon. And, yeah, we think we're going to have a lot of very successful evenings here. Please.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
There will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences. Yes. Yeah, please.
Can I ask you a question about the Fed?
Right next to you, please. Yeah.
About the Federal Reserve.
Oh, Federal Reserve, my favorite. Too late.
He's
too late.
You're considering suing Jay Powell. Can you update us on your thinking about that and tell us where you are in your search for a new chair?
Well, he took a building that could have been painted and fixed, like we're going to fix this building for very little money. And that was in better shape. He took a building and what they did to that building, they built a basement under the building. It didn't have a basement. This is simple to understand. The building is right next to a thing called the Potomac River, the beautiful Potomac River. That means lots of water. And the water is right under the building. And they decide to build a basement under the building in the Potomac River. So in order to do that, you need the biggest pumps that God ever created. And they were pumping their hearts out, but as big as those pumps are, you can't pump it fast enough because it's the Potomac River. If the pump were bigger than this room, you couldn't pump it. But they tried, and they've been building a basement. And I said, why did you want to build a basement? I thought it would be a good idea, sir. A basement is the least valuable floor in a building. I know a lot about real estate. The least valuable thing is the basement. And you don't build a basement under a building that is 2 feet above the river that's right next door. You know, it's right near the river. People don't realize the river's right out their window. And that's the beginning. They did just a terrible job. Instead of I could take a ceiling like this, they'd rip out the ceiling because they see a crack. Let's rip out the ceiling. And I would fix the crack, and I would paint the ceiling. And under the ceiling, they put the most incredible protective material. They go out by 3/4 inch, brand new, gorgeous 3/4 inch plywood and sheetrock, hardened sheetrock. And they had it all over the building. So if a little piece of flake came down. But the problem is when they took the ceiling down and it would hit, they spent millions of dollars on protective material that you didn't have to spend anything. He could have done that job for $25 million, and they spent $3.1 billion. He said 2.7, but it's really 3.1. They just don't want to include one of the buildings in the deal. But it's going to be much more than that. And I think he'll be long gone by the time it finishes because they've got a long way to go. And then I hear they want to hire 3,000 economists. What are they going to do? And he got it all wrong. He's too late. We call him Jerome Too Late Powell. It will live with him forever. I believe that name will live with him forever, along with the name Pocahontas and some of the others. He worked closely with Pocahontas, by the way. She's another beauty. But we have a real problem there. They're way over budget, and they did a job that shouldn't have been done. It was unnecessary to be done. Instead of I could have gotten the greatest wallpaper anywhere in the world from the finest stores in the world. I could have fixed up a wall a little bit. It would have taken about 2 hours, and covered it with the most magnificent silk and most magnificent paper for thousands of dollars as opposed to tens of millions of dollars. What a shame it is that they did. But they would take down areas of the building that shouldn't have been taken down. They could have literally been painted, and they didn't do that. So they've got a long way to go. And I think it's just grossly incompetent, but not quite as incompetent as his decision not to do interest rates, take down interest rates, because just like they shouldn't have taken down a ceiling, they should take down interest rates. Every point costs us $360 billion a year. Think of that, $360 billion for 1 point. And we should be down at 1% because we're the leader of the world. We were always the lowest interest rate until like a certain time ago, decade, couple. But we were always, because we were the United States of America. So even if the country was run badly, we were considered like to be super prime. And now he's got us in a bad place. So we're paying $360 billion a year for each point. Now, I believe we should be 3 or 4 points lower. So that's over $1 trillion we pay every year in interest. And it's really just a paper calculation. You sign a document and you save almost $1 trillion because that number equates very much to the bonds that we have to buy. But despite that, we're powering through it, and we have the greatest economy maybe we've ever had. But the housing sector, people aren't able to get good mortgages. They're paying too much because of Jerome Too Late Powell. He's truly incompetent. And we'll be making another. We put a very good man in temporarily in the one spot because one of the people that was appointed by the Democrats left early. And I heard left because that person wanted lower interest rates. And I heard quit, but I have no idea. I'm sure she won't say that. I'll be naming a new chairman sometime within the next. I think I'll name it a little bit early, the new chairman. I'm down to 3 or 4 names, all good, all great. The problem is you name them and then they turn out to be not good. That's happened to me a couple of times. You name somebody, they tell you everything you want to hear, and then they go in and they turn out to be not good. I mean, he told me everything that I thought was appropriate. He turned out to be a stiff, real stiff. But other than that, I think he's doing a very good job, yes. Okay, maybe 1 or 2 more. 1 or 2 more. Yes, sir, please. Go ahead.
Mr. President.
Looks like Scott Bessent. Are you the Treasury Secretary?
You don't want me for Treasury.
I don't know. You look like you could do a good job. Go ahead.
I keep my family budget okay. Sir, when you meet with Vladimir Putin Friday in Alaska,
yeah,
do you believe you can convince him to stop targeting civilians in Ukraine?
Well, I'll tell you what. I've had that conversation with him. I've had a lot of good conversations with him. Then I go home and I see that a rocket hit a nursing home or a rocket hit an apartment building and people are laying dead in the street. So I guess the answer to that is no, because I've had this conversation. I want to end the war. It's Biden's war, but I want to end it. I'll be very proud to end this war along with the 5 other wars I ended. But I guess the answer to that is probably no, because I would have had a good conversation with Vladimir. I knew him very well. I got along with him great, actually. We had I had to go through the Russia hoax. And it was actually, it was a strain on the relationship. I actually told him, I said, they got this phony investigation going on, Russia, totally phony, created by Adam Schiff, Shifty Schiff, and Hillary Clinton and the whole group of them. And it made it very dangerous for our country because I was unable to really deal with Russia the way we should have been. I'm looking at Pam because I hope something's going to be done about it. These people put our country at great danger. And Adam Schiff, it was all made up. It was a hoax. The Mueller report came out. They all hated me. They had 18 Trump haters. And they said I did nothing wrong. They couldn't believe, they couldn't find anything. After years of investigation, it was all a hoax. It was a hoax created by the Democrats, but in particular Schiff and Crooked Hillary, the whole group. And now we've learned all the stuff that's come out over the last 2 months is incredible through intelligence. And hopefully something's going to happen with it. These are people that put our country in danger. in real danger. I want to thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic group of honorees. You have George Strait to the great Michael Crawford, Sylvester Stallone, Gloria Gaynor, and Kiss. I'm a huge fan of all of them, so I was pretty excited during that entire press conference. A fun side note, my voice teacher all the way back in high school, she played Carlotta with Michael Crawford for 2,000 plus engagements in Los Angeles, California, an off-Broadway production of Phantom of the Opera by the great Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber. So an exciting time in this golden era. As President Trump said, it doesn't matter what their political background is. It's about honoring those who have contributed in such great ways to society. And if you have a chance, look into all of their backgrounds. It wasn't the easiest journey for most of them, especially the legendary Gene Simmons of Kiss, at one point actually living with 6 other members of his family in New York City, being born in Israel. It's a great Jewish American story, and only a story that can be made in this great country of ours, nearly 250 years young. As President Trump delivers remarks at the Kennedy Center and takes questions from our friends and colleagues live there in Washington, D.C. If there's any breaking news coverage, we'll be right here with you as your go-to live desk at Right Side Broadcasting Network at the bottom of the hour, 12:30 on the East Coast. Good afternoon and still a good morning in the Golden Coast of California along the west coast of this great country of ours. I'm Robert McNeely. For all of my colleagues at Right Side Broadcasting Network, God bless you, have a great day, and we'll see you soon on the right side of history.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door.